Hello everyone and welcome to my stream today. Late. I've tried something a little different this week. I've been paying way too much money to StreamYard, and I've been having all these weird performance bugs recently with the chat and stuff. I want to try the stream at 720. I've been paying the extra for the 1080 full quality stream, and I got a suspicion that except for in this view when you're seeing, full screen my mug, that you're not going to really notice a huge difference. I have a way better setup than I did when I used to do 720 when I was like in my living room at night with a blur on my camera. I think we're kind of past that, and I think that 720 is probably fine. Yeah, I go up a whole tier for 1080, and I don't know if it's worth it. So we're gonna see if it's worth it today. You guys can tell me. Yeah, come say hi. Yeah. Thank you. Hello. Let's see what we got here. Solid becoming quick. No, I'll talk about this. But yes, we get to find out what Alexis has been up to. I think it's so hard. I don't call what Quick does, like the part about Quick that has to do with resumability. Like to me, like at least in my head, I separate the resumability aspects from like the way Quick lazy loads code. I think the lazy loaded code is interesting because there are things like mini apps which do a lot of this kind of downloading of applications in the background. And if that was just built in to the experience authoring, I think that is actually an interesting case. And mini apps have been this kind of thing that, if you aren't familiar, they like run inside a native mobile app. Essentially, like you install a native mobile app initially, and then they're like sub apps inside of it, and they're popular in Southeast Asia, places with lower internet connectivity. It's interesting because we spend a lot of time, especially on the e-commerce in the Western world and all this, to try and get those initial page speed scores faster. But I had a gentleman come on my one of my articles and was like, Ryan, you're talking about low-end devices, you're talking about networks and like how to maximize this stuff. Our internet's so bad we don't even care about this. Like it's just not even like page speed is not a thing we even care about. It was the author of I think it's, what was the name of the framework? F-R-E. He was saying like we're beyond having any hope of like SEO and all the stuff that gets promoted through like Google page scores. We just need stuff that loads, in the background, and that we can get a somewhat smooth experience and work mostly offline. And he's like, that's like the completely opposite end of the spectrum of all these MPA type optimizations everyone's been working on. So I do think it is interesting from mini apps perspective, that kind of lazy loading code. Resumability enables this. So that is interesting, but that is also not what we're talking about today. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. All right, more people come and said hi. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm not doing real-time games. Hey, John. Yeah, a lot of highs coming in. In French, please. All right. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about 1.8 today. 1.8, and we can talk about that a little bit. Yeah, let's talk about 1.8 here in a second. I'm just going to tell people that we're live here. I'm just taking my sweet time here while the Twitch pre-rolls run. Did I ever tell you that I think it was Ben Holmes? Someone made me a really nice like streams about the start intro thing, but like, you know me, I never figure anything out. I probably could spend some time and figure out how to get that in there, but I never did. Okay, let's see. Twitch is alive too. Okay, but yeah, let's share that the stream has gone live. This is good prep because it makes sure that I use Mac where it like forces you to restart everything if you're not sharing, but sometimes, yeah, no, we're good. Sometimes it forgets. let's get serialized. Yeah, no, serializations has been a topic that you keep on seeing in a lot of frameworks for a while now. And it's not like Solid didn't serialize promises and do all that for ages. Otherwise, streaming wouldn't work. It's just, we've had to relook at this a little bit again. Okay, yeah, what am I doing here? I am reposting with a quote tweet, yes. What is it? Twitch TV/Ryan Solid. Yeah, let's do this. Does it always leave that? It usually doesn't. Oh, wait. Why does this not? Let's try this again. See, did I lose the quote tweet? Sometimes this stuff gets kind of, you can see how like incompetent I am at this stuff. Let's try this again. Quote, see? Huh? Twitch just, or Twitter, sorry, or X or whatever it wants to be called, just glitching out on me. All right, here we go. I'm actually pretty excited. Some content came across today that I want to talk about too, because it's really interesting. But we'll get to that a bit later. How are we doing? Yeah, I'm trying 720 right now just because I really am wondering if it's going to make a huge difference here. And it basically doubles my StreamYard cost. At one point, it's so funny, like I did something kind of dumb and I haven't been, I usually been charging some of these kind of fees to Open Collective, just because it's like part of supporting the Solid project. And I didn't switch to another year pass. I only did monthly for a little bit because I was going to talk to Theo and see what was up with ping, you know. But he was like, "Man, you don't have a like OBS." It was a while ago. OBS hadn't released M1 or M2 based version yet, so it was like clogging down. So he's like, "No, don't bother with that. You know, we'll just StreamYard does all the stuff you need. It's going to get a lot more complicated." And he knows how adverse I am to complicated tooling. But I left it for a bit because I was like, oh, he's like, man, you know, we'll see if we can work a deal for you. Then I never actually ended up doing it, and I just ended up paying the full StreamYard cost for several months. And now I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. All right. What are we talking about here? Just checking here. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love hearing stories like this. Some of the work with the Solid Astro combination has been really nice. Like, what's another good one? Example, I think NordVPN is another one. They redid their whole site with us. And then another cool one was, I don't know if this is out yet. We should see. Capital One is, I think, working on something under wraps, even though I just put it on stream. Ryan has 1,211 commits on Solid. The second most commits is 27. Yeah, and the second most is by Otanashi, who's literally TypeScript wizard, and the only reason any of the TypeScript works, in my opinion. I think I'm yes, Solid itself. It's funny when you go into any of the other repos, it's a very different story. This is what I've always liked about Solid. We'll talk about this a bit today, I think, because the maintenance cost in the surface area Solid is not undoable by one person or a couple people, whereas, you know, Solid Start is definitely not. But yeah, it's interesting. And a lot of those commits, some of them are like basically update from DOM expressions. So you have to like go to another project to see the full history, which is a complaint people have had that we wanted to talk about with Solid 2.0, is seeing how we can get more visibility on this stuff and kind of bring it together. It's just tricky because I built DOM expressions to be agnostic, so it's like weird when it comes in under Solid banner, but it's, you know, one of the things being talked about. All right, people still coming and saying hi. How are we doing? Yeah, I think we're finally getting everyone coming in. Nice. See, I love again stories like this. Medical app with 3D visualization built in Solid. Yeah, I think there's a lot of really app-like situations where we just fit really, really nice. So I'm pretty stoked to see kind of this progression happen and start seeing these apps in out in the wild is the term, you know? All right. Will I affect how they affect solid start? Yeah, I'll talk about it. Yeah, let's get there. Yeah. To be fair, 1.8 is not out yet today. Okay. Just like it's close. There's a couple things I'm gonna look at, and to be fair, I probably might even look at a thing or two on stream just because you know we're here. Do you see people migrating from Solid to Angular signals yet? Thank you for being part of our community, Parasocial. I love that. Yeah. ViteConf was sweet, and we'll talk about that too. Yeah. So, where do I want to start here? Not any of this. This is This Week in JavaScript stuff. Let's switch over. Let me go to GitHub. Maybe that'll be easier to see than in my stuff. Although there is a next branch, and on this next branch, there is the stuff that I have been working on, and I made a changelog, which is kind of like a preview version of what the release announcement looks like. This is how I test it out. This is not a huge amount of features. If you've seen any of like my, usually I've got like a lot more stuff going on. If let me throw a banner up right now so Jesse has a little bit to work with. Yeah, there we go. Jesse does an amazing job. I think my last stream was like 6 hours or something. So yeah, anyways, let's go. Okay. Introducing Solid 1.8, which means I'm just introducing you to the development of it. We're talking about building it. We're talking about what went into it. It is not quite out yet today, but it is in beta. So you can like use like 1.80 beta 1 or beta.1. Like you can try it right now. The thing is, it does come with changes on Babel preset. So like even when I was in Solid Start trying to get it to work, it was like a bit of a pain because of other dependencies. If you can make sure all the dependencies are forced to the right version, then you will see the updates coming in. But we're going to talk about them. Mark Mills, angular-signals-jsx. Okay, so this is what you guys are talking about. Give me a second. Let's see what this is. Okay, I see. So someone made like, yeah. Okay, so this is why DOM expressions is a open library, right? This is like, you know how I used to go and take DOM expressions and apply it to all the libraries. We even made the Preact version on stream. Someone did it with the Angular version. Yeah, because I made one for Vue, I made one for MobX, I made one for everyone. Yeah. There you go. Bam. There you go. Now you can use Angular signals and they're just as fast as Solid. Yeah, I mean this is, oh man, this is almost like This Week in JavaScript worthy. Can we talk about this later? Thank you for flagging this to me. We'll talk about this later. This is off topic, but I love it. Okay. Wrong. All right. Okay. So choose a framework with signals. Yeah. The V talk was great. Now, anyways, okay. So I admit, I'm just reading a bit of this out loud, but I admit this release is not the most exciting from a feature standpoint. Like if you remember 1.7, we did a whole bunch of TypeScript stuff. I love that stream. Honestly, people probably reference it now, but I went in real depth about why signals and TypeScript are a pain in the ass. Very relevant to the Svelte conversation, because a lot of frameworks will be like, hey, we don't want to fight TypeScript too much, right? And I don't want to fight TypeScript too much, but like on the other hand, I can't let TypeScript dictate what happens. Like, I'm sorry, they're not in charge of us, and there is no really good answer here. So we spent a lot of time exploring that on 1.7. 1.8 is kind of, it's making those preparatory steps towards 2.0 and understanding that multiple pieces are going to be coming in for 2.0 at the same time, in different channels, and some things will come out before 2.0 and stuff will be after, but we have to make sure we can move forward. And this one was really guided by, as many of you know, Alexis has been working on Solid Start with the Google Chrome Aurora funding, there was this whole, they gave us a bunch of money to work on stuff. And the thing is, what they care about largely is Core Web Vitals, performance metrics, and stuff like this. So we started measuring them and making a benchmark for it. It's a little bit rough, and we still need more work, but we started kind of putting stuff together and measuring stuff. And we started working on what our future island solution would look like. And if you've been following along the stream the last few weeks, or months, really last month or so, you know that I've been struggling with server component design, and I've been looking a lot at like what those fundamental building block pieces are. And the thing that kept on highlighting, and this is why people in the chat are asking like, hey, when is create async, or how is that, like, how's the, what is it called? Request for comments. RFC, yes. When is that coming out? How's that coming along? And the truth of the matter is, we have to look at create resource and deconstruct it to its pieces. And part of that is separating the mechanism for serialization and data propagation and even the streaming from the resource primitive itself, right? If we're going to simplify create resource and simplify the async propagation, we got to work on the reactive graph side, which Milo's kind of started some work on. He did some stuff with Bubble. I think we need to do some optimization there still. But for those interested, Solid Signals, I did make the repo public. It's not ready yet. I haven't done like a NPM release. There's been some great people working on this project. Tanner helped a lot early days with testing the store capability. Raheem from Maverick Framework worked a lot on the core reactivity as well, along with Milo and myself. And there's still work to be done. One of the coolest things about this project is you actually see this bubble reactivity, which is, it's like we've gone through 3 stages. It started with reactively, and then we put it in this repo, and then we updated it with some work with Raheem, and then we moved it to. Then he used that same basis for at Bubble, Milo did, and added more stuff, and then we brought that back in. And the end result, I think I talked about this before, is a reactive core primitive that doesn't have effects in it, that is in theoretically universal, right? And this has kind of come up as a lot about the foundation of what could be a React signal primitive for the browser. They're still working on the official one, but this is something that we'd already been doing for a couple months or a few months before this whole thing came up. And that you can kind of see the separation between what could be truly universal here and then like what is solid specific. In any case, a lot of good work here, some updates to things like stores that we're kind of playing around with, a very basic version of create async. This is not the primitive that I was showing on stream, but just the kind of basic idea. But the idea is we need to separate this stuff out, okay? And if we're going to separate this stuff out, we need to kind of build up all the different pieces independently of each other. And the thing is, so we got one side of this reactive stuff, but we need the serialization stuff because of this work that we're doing around the performance optimization with the Aurora funding. So it made sense to do 1.8 release. I know there's a lot of people who are like asking for features or like, adding stuff to Solid. I am very hesitant at this point in 1x to actually change stuff very much unless it's like a clear deprecation path. And even then, there's some questions that I think it leaves open. So this is mostly about internals and setting us up better for the future, okay? So, it's busy. I mean, that is right now, but those don't have to be mutually exclusive in any case. It's interesting that you mentioned language agnostic, not just browser. That's obviously much trickier, but a lot of the work, people have been getting brought in the project. It started with a lot of framework authors like myself and Rich Harris and Dominic Ganaway. But recently, like especially with Milo and some of his kind of group of people, Shay from Bubble, guys work behind Starbeam. It's gone like they're having conversations about reactivity in other languages. They're looking at stuff like OCaml and like different projects in different languages and using that as inspiration for the signal spec. So there's a lot of work really going on that's really cool. So I am looking forward to how that progresses. Yeah, the challenge here about the language agnostic piece is like, and this is something that's coming up a lot in this thing, and I try not to detour too hard, but with signals in the browser, you know, there's a difference between, there's people like the framework authors who care about the mechanical aspects and want to have control over it, and then there's like the most people on the RX side really care about the contract, like about the API, and it's very hard there because the API is kind of part of the point of contention. Like that's where we all differ, right? Like Svelte doesn't want to expose a signal as a thing, but like, you know what I mean? Like that's the wrong wording. They don't want you to ever hold an object that is type of signal. But like, in Solid, actually, we have a very similar thing. We don't want an is signal thing. Like it's interesting that that the interface makes it like the challenge with the interface is really we want it as a language level feature, I think, ultimately, and it's going to take a bit to get there because I think it actually requires its own syntax. So maybe JavaScript will never get there. Anyways. Yes, I should read the question before I answer it. That is a good point. Rather than just like, in my head, I'm like, I'm putting it on the screen so people can read it, but not, people view from different devices, and you're right, that is the thing. Yeah, so, I mean, that's what the question is. What does this look like? Anyway, a lot of interesting work here, but this 1.8 release, I said, is kind of a tangent. It's kind of like, right now, there's like myself and Nikhil, which you saw at the ViteConf, working on trying to get Solid Start stable. Myself and Alexis working on trying to do future Solid Start research, like into like performance and stuff, which is largely what spawned 1.8. And then myself and Milo and them working on the signals stuff for Solid 2.0. So like we are, there's multiple things going on right now. 1.8 is actually about supporting mostly 2.0 future and the experimental stuff. So the biggest feature, and I want to talk about this, and maybe we can look at this, is we changed the serialization in Solid. Solid's had promised serialization, this custom resource serialization thing forever, but we hit this interesting problem. And that problem is that when you have islands, well, actually I can show you. I think you can picture this. I actually, Astro Hacker News. Is it running right now? Like 2 streams ago? No, it's 3000, right? Yeah. Oh no, what does Astro run on? Do they use the 5173? 5173. Four, 3, 2, 1. There we go. I can just show this example right here. Yeah. Thank you, chat. All right. What I'm getting at is, everyone's seen the silly nested comment thing, and luckily for us, with this recursive islands pattern for this, because we're only compressing the comments, we actually don't need to pass this through, and this can be completely server rendered, right? So let's see if we can see it in Astro. I mean, it would be the same in Solid Start. It would be basically the same thing, but if we can see this in Astro, it would be helpful. Yeah, see props, empty object, okay? And the reason props empty object is because essentially, yeah, I got a lot of garbage here from when we were playing around, is because our toggle component has no props. We don't pass anything through, so it's able to server render the children and not serialize any data. But in a situation where we actually had props that we did have to pass through, because if you notice, this is a recursive pattern. Let me see if I can find a story component. I have a lot of garbage in here from when we were playing, but yeah, or no, the comment component. What we do is we actually map over the comments and then like basically put another comment component in and toggle it and do this thing. But if the toggle actually had something like garbage, like something we had to serialize, now TypeScript's going to complain to me, but I'm hoping that Astro will let me get past this. If I do this, what I'm expecting to happen is where we had props empty object before, we now have something else. Props equals quote garbage quote something something. Okay. Anyways, what you're seeing is we're now serializing the props for the island, because that's how islands work. We have to serialize the props to get them in. And sorry, wrong window. What is interesting in that recursive case is pretend you did have to pass the comment through. Like, so you went comment. Let's make this real. Let's pass the comment through. And if you notice, the comment has comments in it because it's recursive, right? So if we refresh the page and now we look at our props, we're going to see the serialized version of the comment. But my theory here is we're also going to see the serialized version of all the children comments as well, because you have to serialize not just the comment, but the comments on the comment. And if we actually look through this, we're going to find, well, actually, we can do we can look at the network and see if we can prove my point. Pick something deep here. What should terminate with an empty output, right? If we go to the network tab here and look at the rendered HTML, where is it? .js, let's do doc. And we look for this text. It shows up 4 times. And the reason it shows up 4 times is because it shows up for itself plus for each ancestor. And this is kind of a problem when you don't have denormalized kind of like prop handling with islands. It's more prevalent because if you think about it, if you make your whole app into a single blob like a spa, you basically you have to serialize all that data. You have like no choice. Next JSON. But if you have islands, you only need to serialize the props. Great benefit here is you don't have to serialize all the data that you don't need on the client. But the interesting part when you add the islands is if you're sending that same data multiple times, you might have an issue. Now, if a lot of systems, like even Solid before, had this really simple shallow thing, like if it gets the same object exactly, we could do this kind of serialization trick because we have like a centralized serialization. I don't know if Astro can do that, maybe not. But with nested, this becomes a whole new level of complication, right? Is everyone following along so far? Right. This is not just like Astro. Like Solid Start has this issue as well, and I think a lot of islands solutions, right? So like, while, we can serialize promises, been doing it for years, de-duping is interesting. And de-duping is actually tricky when you have streaming, because like a simple serializer, you're like doing async stuff. So like stuff's coming and going. Like you need to know like through the lifetime of the request if you've already serialized something. So basically, we wanted to come back here and not cause this kind of duplication. All right. Just reading some chat. Or just serialize it at the root and use context advice I heard for RCs. We're ignoring these comments for now. Yeah, I know you're not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it solves the issue, but we're also kind of yeah. So there's probably some smart solutions to this. One of the challenges I had was like Solid actually uses fairly simple data, so we were actually like it would be pretty easy to kind of encode the path. That's what I used to use in Solid. But Serial, which is the serializer, actually supports stuff like sets and maps and things that might need to be initialized over multiple like steps. So we went with the simplest solution for now, which I'm going to show here, and we'll kind of play with a bit. So I have solid repo with the latest, and we can kind of look at this. Let me actually, where's Astro? We're going to stop this for a second. Hopefully it's clear what I'm getting at. I actually haven't run it on this computer yet. Sorry, I just installed. Let's make sure the tests are passing. But let's also do the build for me. Essentially, we came up with a way of just both keeping a weak map on the server for de-duping purposes, and then keeping a reference array in the client that can use, and that way, if the same references come across, we can point to the right thing. Combining that with a serializer that's based on key value, and a system, so we can go, right to this key, this value, and we like instead of just serialize a value, have a serializer that's aware, like an instance that goes with the request. We're able to handle deep nested deduping and deep nested like promises, which is something I haven't played with. So I think we should actually play with it here. But first, what I'm going to do is go pnpm, was it filter, not example notes. I think it's solid SSR build example stream. Let's do that. Example stream. This is how I often test SSR locally. I have this really simple app, and it's on localhost 8080. Yeah, this example's shown up a few different places. I think it might even be in the Solid tutorials, but there's 3 pages. There's a page with a up counter. I use this usually to show suspense, see how it's still updating while the transition's happening. Simple update field, and then this one has the cascading data load. Okay, so let's look at what we're getting now for this, because it's a little bit different now. We have our startup hydration script. We have this expands a lot deeper. I was talking to Alexis about getting rid of the function calls and using arrow functions. We don't have to worry about older versions. But this is some data this is some serializable helpers. But then what it does is it sets up a registry. And I said this what I don't like about this is it uses a bit more space in the like showing using the references, but it does give us the ability to dedupe stuff. So basically what you're seeing here is these keys are getting set. This is like a helper for initializing a promise. And then later on, what you'll see is as the stuff streams in, we get our finished template. And then, well, it's not fully finished. There's a second stream template in here, right here, which is the first loading state. But you'll see that it resolves this promise with this data, streams out the code to move the suspense boundary to place. Later on, streams in the last bit of template, resolves that promise, and resolves the suspense. Now suspense is actually just the suspense boundary is just a promise that resolves, which is nice because we got rid of all like the special stuff. What's really cool about this is that there's an internal API that I still haven't figured out what I want to do in terms of exposing it, but the way this works is we just make let me go solid source server rendering. It's just the serialize call. basically. And if I go into DOM expressions, where is it? Top level. What you're going to see, it simplified the server code actually a lot. I don't know if many of you spend a lot of time looking at the render to stream server code, but now it's basically like create a serializer, use the render ID to scope, on data, push our tasks into the queue, on done, check that it's done. And because this, basically the serializer now tells us when the stream is done, right? We say like, hey, we're done rendering. And then the serializer goes, okay, I'm done serializing. And this lets us like have dangling resources and stuff resolved properly, which is something that we've kind of missed in the past. But the serialize function used to be a lot more complicated now. Basically, we mark whether this promise is something that should hold the stream initial flush. Like this is the defer stream feature of the resource. And then other than that, it's basically just serialize the promise, or in this case, if we're going to wait for the stream anyways, just serialize the value when it resolves. But that's it. Like that's what we can do now, which if you're wondering, this blocking promises are the ones we wait for before starting the flush. Why this is important is because if we have to respond with the response headers at the beginning of the stream. Once we send back a response, you can't do it. So some promises or resources need to be resolved before you send back the streaming response. So this is just our way of, marking it. But yeah, this, I mean, I probably, let's just, like, you see the serialize function here. If I go back to, this is solid, but let's go DOM expressions and go to main branch, packages, DOM expressions, source, server. Besides having like a bunch of other helpers, let me see here. A lot of this is most the same. Like we used to like do a bunch of weird encoding stuff in this. This write resource is the old version of this. Like you can see similarities, but there's just, I can't even explain how hacky I was playing around with the serialization. We used to use arrays and have the first element either be the data or the promise, and then the second element be the resolve function. Like it was a type of promise serialization, but it wasn't nearly as neat as this. So in any case, what I'm getting at is this serialize thing is pretty powerful because like we can do stuff that is kind of goofy. Like to be fair, this isn't going to change this data too much, but let's play with this for a second. Let's go in and look at my solid SSR example, right? This is the example we're looking at. It has a shared folder because this is how I show SSG streaming async, like all the different solid render methods. Inside here, there's a router, which is not solid router. It's just I made a router in like one file, very simply using switch or something. Am I using switch? What am I using? I don't even remember. This is like the most basic router someone could make. Yeah, I mean, let me look at home. I think, or app, sorry. Link. Probably should update. Yeah, it's just a switch match when matches, and then I had the router expose the matches. Okay, so anyways, the profile page where we had all that data was doing this thing where it's like new promise. What's cool about this is like we could add something on here now. I mean, I'm not saying we would, but we could add something on here like, what do I want to do? Something. Okay. And then we could like inside the promise do new promise. What do we want to do? Resolve. I'm like, this is the problem with like when I'm screen is safe for streaming. It's just like too much stuff going on. Just let's maybe we can format this. Maybe it's long enough that it goes to prettier being weird. It's because I have something that isn't proper. Anyways, let's just go on a new line so I can see what I'm doing. New promise. Yeah, okay, that's new promise. Something. Okay, object, fine, okay. And then presumably, I'm just gonna do the same thing again, but we'll put different data in. We'll just make it go set timeout, which actually means I do want the, doesn't matter, just do this, make this into curly braces, that into curly braces. We'll just like resolve with something else. I'm like just losing track of all my brackets right now. It's fine. This is the set timeout. This is 400, or let's make this longer. Let's make this 1200. And then this, there's no comma here. Okay. Anyway, prettier, please work. No, okay. But okay, let's, and instead of John, let's just resolve like, okay. Now, hopefully this works the way I think it's going to work. But what we're doing is we're nesting a promise inside a promise. So when the promise resolves, it resolves with a data structure that has a promise in it. And again, you're like, why are we doing this? It probably isn't going to affect the UI timing. But what's cool is you can actually see, oh, can I get in here fast enough? Okay, I didn't get in. Let's make the last timeout like much longer. Sorry, not Astro. Let's make it like 6 seconds or something. Sorry. So you can see. Right, I have to build it again. Sorry, this is not like HMR. This is like my simple tester thing. Okay, so now you can see the thing switch into place and then wait for it. Oh, it's interesting what that did. Because it didn't re-render, but it like that's interesting. I wasn't expecting the body to do something. That is interesting. What is going on there? Because the page doesn't reload. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. It must be because of the way that we append the stuff to the end of the body that it causes it to like have to recalculate. That's interesting. Good to know. Anyway, but what you can see here is like 6 seconds later, the Heya gets serialized and comes in over the wire. So like, you know, this just makes a process generic, which is pretty powerful because it means that like you don't need create resource for this in theory. In fact, if you look on the GitHub, Alexis was like, he knows that I'm not necessarily just gonna like add a new feature right now, but he's like, what is a create resource from a streaming serialization standpoint? Like we need the resource read to do special stuff for suspense streaming so that like it like triggers the view properly. So there is a need for an async reactive consideration, but he was like, what if you don't care about that? What if it's like you just want to grab a promise and you don't use it in the view? It has nothing to do with anything. You know, he like all create resource is doing is using Solid's create unique ID, which is our ID generation that's stable on both sides, and using the serialization. So like he basically made a create server value that's literally, if there's a hydration context that has the ability to like load stuff, create a new ID, and there's actually a shortcut for creating this ID. He just did it in line. If we don't already have this ID, load it. So this is the client side. So yeah, so this just increments the ID. I guess he could have used create unique ID, interestingly. He did it manually. But then on the server side, he just calls serialize with that ID and the value. And his example here was that when you have math.random on the server, or date now on the server, it's going to generate a new value in the client when it runs the first time. Here, by just making this server value, it'll be stable on both sides. So this was his joke about, he called it baby resumability, because he didn't use create unique ID here, but it's basically the same idea. He could have just gone create unique ID, serialize at that ID, create unique ID, read from that, load from that ID. And that's basically how easy this is at a low level to be able to send the data across the wire and have it stabilize. So basically what he's getting at is like, we could in theory just like serialize any value, any part of the graph, anything just very simply. As long as we have some kind of ID mechanism, we can now just send it across the wire and have it, be there. So this isn't actually resumability in the true sense, because but you could picture like if you had something expensive, like a expensive calculation you can run on the server, and then it'll just be present. So like a memo, like pretend you just went through and serialized every memo for some reason. I don't know why, but like then you would never run that code at hydration time. So like it's that kind of scenario. I mean, obviously you have to serialize the reactive graph if you want to actually like have it be reactive. So this is a bit oversimplistic, but this is basically what he was kind of playing around with, right? So he was very excited about this. As I said, this came across mostly because of that problem with basically serializing islands props that I was talking about a moment ago. But you can see that by having a generic de-duping streaming serializer, you can do a lot of stuff. Not just de-duping resources and promises, deeply nested. Obviously with Serial support, we get support for other types of data structures. Like if you want to serialize a readable stream for some reason, or a blob or whatever. Like once you get down this path, you start trying to figure out how to serialize everything. I think, as I said, Quick is an example of one of those frameworks that just tries to figure out how to serialize everything. But as I said, we were able to just incorporate this right into our out of order streaming setup, which is something that we already had set up, right? It's both pieces. It's both being able to serialize these pieces in a reasonable way, and having the reactive graph that understands suspense and inserts and all that stuff to do the out of order streaming. Yeah. Anyway, let me catch up with chat here. How you doing? All right. Wait, Tom says it's streaming. I didn't know. Yeah, it's built right into the core. So yeah, in theory, that Angular signals project, maybe like with a little bit of work, if they set up the shared context and stuff properly, they could have streaming, out of order streaming, angular-jsx signals or whatever. Yeah. All right. We use Solid for our dental practice management since sounds like yeah, this is one of the things I want to work with in 2.0, simplifying the difference between these. Create computed is almost definitely getting deprecated. Every minor release of Solid, like 1.8, 1.7, 1.6, since 1.5, I've been like waiting to see if I want to like introduce different primitives or give patterns and deprecate create computed. Create reaction is special and very low level that no one should basically use. Create deferred, again, no one should really use. It's tricky when you offer these primitives. Some of them, now that we have a better structure, I'm going to probably just move out of core so they're less confusing to people, because like they don't need to be there. Like create deferred, they don't need to be there, but someone might have that use case, and I like to show that there's a solution for it. Good question. How stream sort when the connection breaks? Well, yeah, I mean, this is something that we have to get better at. I think we all have to get better at. The browser does tell you when the stream fails, so you can kind of recoup, but it's hard because like you can't really like, what are you going to do? You can, in some cases you can say, yeah, re-render it on the client at this point, but you really should just request the page again, realistically. We have error boundaries handling, so if something throws, we catch it, then we can do it. But I'm basically, I need to test more of the edge cases in this scenario. But it is definitely, it is part of that set of trade-offs where like you're extending the original thing. On the other hand, without streaming, you'd be waiting for that last thing to finish before you sent anything to the browser. You know what? I wonder if we can see that. Yeah, I'm kind of curious where we sit on this now, because in the past I only cared about resources that were finished in order to do async rendering, which makes sense because like I initially started with async and then added streaming on top. This sort of is a streaming first mentality. So my gut here is if I start the non-streaming render, it's going to have to wait that 6 seconds before it shows anything, because now it's the same thing. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, see? Yeah. Because if you committed to serializing that data, then you can't respond with the page until all the data is loaded. Obviously, the 6 seconds is a bit extreme, but I mean, that is the situation you are when you pick up a non-out-of-order streaming framework today. Next 13 supports streaming with their RCs, but like if you weren't making RC like a SPA Next or, again, Remix supports streaming now because React supports streaming, but like previously, like SvelteKit, I can't remember where they are on streaming, but like basically if you don't have streaming, you would have to wait for everything before you could show anything. Right. So like, yeah, I mean, the request could also fail while that's happening. Yeah. I show you everyone's stuff in incognito. Yes, this is accurate. Solid start needs more time. Solid is good. Is pretty good. I mean, we are making some changes in Solid 2.0 to async primitives, but like the core of Solid is, pretty good. There's some semantic changes. Anytime there's 2.0, like some stuff happens, but Solid 1.0 is definitely production ready and good. Very stable. Been for years. What about serializing component? Well, I mean, what is a component? Is it a function call? I was taught islands basically have to serialize the JSX output or the HTML, but I mean, what is the output? This is the basis here. When we have this basis, that now we can answer these questions. Another thing I had on my list here is like serializing the templates, but like we can build that as a layer on top as well, right? Like, so I'm okay with this for now. It is part of the question and the part of the research that's happening. Yes. Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to. Like, what is like it's a little trickier because the way when you serialize signals, the way you have to do it is you have to serialize its dependencies, and you could do it like because we run it at runtime, we can do it like, but basically as we collect the dependencies nodes, we'd have to like give them all a unique ID, and with the signal itself, serialize the signal and its dependencies, so that when one of those, like basically we have to be able to like trace through the lookup, so like when one of them wakes up, we know to wake up the signal and whatnot. I did talk about this during my like resumability stream earlier, a bit about an approach that could be done without causing you to have all the dollar signs, like resumability without the dollar sign stream. But yes, you're seeing the building blocks here. What do you do with say does? We're good now, right? AWS is still, it now finally supports streaming. I think that was the thing. Yeah, it happened in March. I remember there's like this big, Vercel made this big announcement. They're all like, yes, we now have streaming with our thing. And they did this crazy, like I say it's crazy, but it's ingenious way of doing this proxy setup where they could do streams through their AWS server functions. And they've been working on it for like 6 months, or at least 4 months, like since the fall. And they released it. And they're like, look here, now you can actually stream in our serverless functions, even though they're on AWS. And then 1 week later, AWS released it. Like they're just like, oh yeah, now we support streaming. It's like, probably a little frustrating because like it took years. It took like a decade, like for AWS to support it. It felt like forever. Okay. There is actually already a port for SWC. We haven't done the server side part, but the client side does exist. My biggest caution here is like we're still working on changing this stuff, but like Milo, who's behind like the Reactivity 2.0, started a project and there is an SWC plugin. The client, like if you're just using Solid in the client, you can use SWC if you're not doing any SSR stuff. What is it like? I don't even know what it's called. Let's try SWC. Oh, SWC plugin JSX DOM expressions. Here you go. Let's just drop that in chat. Bam. Okay. Apparently the client side stuff is pretty much finished. There's also been a lot of talk about bun this last week. Everyone's wondering what the bun stuff is. And I don't know when to address this exactly, but I just throw this out here right now for those people wondering about bun. Bun supports, like most tools, the basic JSX compilation. If you want to use Solid and Bun, sadly, you either need a custom compiler, which Jared started one, but kind of dropped. To be fair, it was right before Bun went open source. He literally the week before was like, oh, I'm just going to build a Solid compiler. It's like, sweet, but like he didn't have time to kind of invest in that. Or you basically have to run Babel and Bun. If Babel works in Bun, then you're fine. Or SWC, I guess, for the client-side stuff. But essentially, the scenario here is you cannot just use the basic JSX transform and get the Solid experience. See, technically, you can because we support it in this way, but I'm never going to recommend that to anyone. And while that's been fine for like the Fable and the Reason people in other languages who kind of have to make do, if you're in our ecosystem, don't waste your time. I know there's some Dino people like that too. It's like this can never be the full solution, right? It's because the JSX transform, the standard one, is a transform. It is special. It is not standard. It can't handle all the scenarios. Will never handle all the scenarios. So pretending like it's like the standard thing, is basically a pointless exercise because it's like you're going to need a compiler. They just happen to choose to implement this compiler because React uses it. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sorry, basically we need a Bun plugin or Wave running Babel. Like there's an example in an article that was written with Bun and Svelte where they just put the compiler in a Bun plugin and they called Svelte compiler. Well, if you can call Babel like that, then you can do the same thing, right? At that point, you're kind of exiting Bun's performance zone and getting into like, third-party compiler, and that's the scenario. You obviously, when people build their tools for React, React's going to have an advantage, but that's not the other tool's fault. That's just the reality of things. It's not any more standards or any more, less work or less, like it's just like the popular solution was implemented. All right. Yeah. If that's the case, I've been seeing a lot of conversations where people are trying to do stuff and they're like, how can I set up my JSX for what's the term, pragma for solid. And it's like, no, just don't go down that thing. Just don't go there. I mean, hopefully TypeScript ignores the JSX, right? Like we can't just, TypeScript again is another one that only compiles React or Preact or, that flavor of JSX. So if you say JSX preserve, then you have to run it through Solid's compiler, essentially. Yeah, JS preserve is the only way. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just not the same thing. We use JSX because we like it, not because, because all the tooling other than the compilation is actually there for us, like Prettier and stuff. But the compilation is different. We don't use JSX because we like the output of it. We're not a big fans of hyperscript over here. I mean, and the funniest thing is a testimony of this is when we see Svelte 5's compiler and we see Vue Vapor. They're all going to be compiling to stuff very, very similar to Solid, not similar to what JSX compiles to. What even like Inferno couldn't really use what JSX compiles to. Like you could, but it's super de-opted. So basically, the JSX compilation is just not set up to do optimal stuff. So, as I said, people barking down that path or like tag template literals, like as a standard without compilation, they're just missing the fact that just can never be the optimal way. In fact, I mean, Lit 3, I mean, this is, I was thinking about talking about this in This Week in JavaScript, new Lit template compiler, and they're adding signals. Like, I wonder what they're doing here. Why would you need a template compiler for Lit if tag template literals were enough? Okay, just throwing that out there, okay? Like, so I'm sorry for those people who are like standards and like no build. You guys aren't living in the real world, unfortunately. Just like not even remotely in there. And because like the reality is it's either built behind the scenes automatically with a pre thing like in Dino, like you have TypeScript, so you have the TypeScript JSX transform, so you can like kind of pretend it's standard, but it's actually doing all the work. Or you're doing all the work in the open. But in both cases, you're doing all the work. There's a build, right? It's, yeah. Yeah. It's just, yeah. Sorry, it's because I can understand when these new platforms come out, Cloudflare workers, Dino, Bun, they all want to like be able to just jump right into the ecosystem. And I feel, and then they're like, okay, well, how do I do this? Where's the standards? But the reality is the standards on this kind of stuff is not standard. So like pretending it is just, it just doesn't make any sense. So Angular had this thing with their new templates, as I said. They talked why they didn't try JSX because it's runtime. I had to laugh because they clearly know Solid compiles it. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of fighting a little bit uphill, but I mean, Quick. Quick. We're gonna look at something a little bit later when we talk about ViteConf. Manu said something about Quick not using a VDOM. I don't think that's true, and we're gonna prove it on stream. So let's find out. Quick doesn't use the standard JSX transform though. They need to do special stuff there because of what they do. Yeah. But have you ever seen those like super light JSX to DOM update libraries? When they're on the client side, like if you're on the server side, you're fine. Whatever, like who cares? Although, you know what? On the server side, it sucks too. Unless you're concatenating strings, but even then you have all the function wrappers. From a performance standpoint, you've seen what Solid compiles to on the server. Like, I don't think JSX is good on the server. I think JSX standard transform is good nowhere. Like, it's just not good. Because even like one of the biggest things in the VDOM is because they're like the calling all these function trees and doing that. They could just flatten it out into string concats. I mean, calling the function call isn't that bad, but yeah. Right. I like doing no build stuff in it's easy and fun, not to worry, but there's a reason it's not. People don't start compiling for fun. Yeah. Yeah, because Fresh is working very much in the Dino ecosystem, but they still had to like go in there and do stuff. It's not like JSX comes out in the browser and works. You like or TypeScript. You have work to do. Yeah. So like, it's fine, but yeah. Sorry. How did this turn into like a JSX? But the funny thing is, JSX the language is pretty powerful. It's funny because there's a whole group of people that don't like JSX the language, and I'm just like, you guys are crazy. I mean, I get it. If you have a more restrictive DSL, then you have more power to analyze and do more with it. So there's benefit there. But like the whole like, my DSL is an HTML, is just HTML, is also garbage. So it's like, at that point, I'm like, just give me the thing that gives me the most control, like, because all the perceptions around this stuff are just completely wrong when it comes to actually like technical merit. So, whatever. I do think that that like it would be nice to be easy, right? Because like on the other side, I think the reason that the no build stuff comes kind of out is because it's like, man, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just do it like back in the day, right? I open Notepad++, throw in some HTML, call it a day. And with a good enough compile behind the scenes build setup thing where you don't have to do much manual intervention, it can feel like that again, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like that when I open Astro. But like, I don't know. Everyone knows me here. I can't unsee what I've seen. So like, it's fine to do that because it's convenient, but and it's probably a good thing, it makes it easy. It's sometimes why I just pull Astro out a bunch for like easy things I'm working on. But it's also why I can never take those arguments actually seriously at all. Okay, so little bit on the JSX stuff. Forget how we got so off tangent there. We're talking about compilers and nesting, and the bun stuff. I'm looking forward to solid bun integration. There's some problems to start today because of some features that I can't turn off that I don't know why Nikhil turned them on in the first place. But given that we're like replacing that core, I think things will get easier with Solid 2.0 beta, or Solid Beta 2. Sorry, getting all the numbers messed up. Not 2.0 beta, Solid Beta 2. Solid Start Beta 2. God. Because of just the rebasing of the technology. I haven't worked on it as much the last week or two because I've been traveling and doing some other stuff, working on 1.8, but it's like the next thing I'm back to again. So let's continue with some stuff, okay? All right. What else is coming out in 1.8? Actually, I should check Twitch. Sometimes people subscribe on Twitch and I miss it. Oh, Wesley Coder subscribed, tier 1. They subscribed for 13 months. Oh, thank you, Wesley Coder. Yes, lucky number 13 indeed. I missed that comment earlier and I was like, I didn't have the context for it, but now I understand what's going on. I'm sure that was like ages ago. But yeah, it's awesome to see people being involved in the channel for so long. And also, God, I suck at this. Matt Petcheny, sorry. Thank you for subscribing with Prime. As people know, if you have Amazon Prime, you can basically doesn't cost you anything. You can give your favorite streamer a sub, and it goes towards us, and you can just do that every month. So makes it really easy. But yeah. I don't usually spend that much time on Twitch on this stuff, but I do appreciate the support for the channel. It does help over time, paying for the StreamYard costs and stuff like that. StreamYard's not cheap. Anyway, let's continue on a bit here. All right. All right, so let's continue. We cheap guys use OBS. I use OBS as well, but yeah, this is why I'm trying 720. This stream is fine, right? I can just like save half the money here. But yeah, it's very convenient to just have all the banners and everything built in. I'm sure there's like a whole tool set. 1080p. What got me thinking about it is a lot of when I'm a guest on a lot of streams, and a lot of things, like my video comes in at 720. And I gather the whole stream is 1080, but then like the individual cameras are 720. But I don't know how big of a difference this is going to make. Yeah. But like, yeah, this handles all the dual streaming stuff for free. I would actually have to figure out how stuff works, which sounds like laziness. To be fair, it is a bit, because I'd rather be working on other stuff that's solid related than do this. But yeah, I mean, we can look at this. The chat feature though makes it very convenient. Okay. Hydration. We got some hydration fixes coming in. We had this recurring issue where people had like lazy components, where like there'd be like children beside lazy components and it would break hydration, and also top level fragments. And people have been complaining about this in Astro for a while. So I actually looked at it and when Astro 3.0 came out, and I actually found out that it wasn't actually on the solid side. It was in this Astro renderer doing weird stuff. It wasn't even hydrating. It was like breaking stuff. It was like re-rendering stuff in the client. Which scares me a little bit considering how many people use Astro in production with Solid. But maybe they coded in such a way that avoided the problem, because they hid it and then they're just like, oh, this is weird. And they just like wrapped it in a div and called it a day. But now it's actually fixed, which is big. So this is good. This happened at the beginning of September. I already talked about this a little bit. It was actually, it took a little bit of element walking, but this is a lot of the same code that I had to think about and work on when I did the islands for Solid Start. So, not too bad, good practice, so to speak. But there's been some other ones with lazy components, and a lot of this comes down to the way that Solid does something I call onioning, which I've talked about a bit before. But it's tricky when you can have components and components and components and components, and like at top level there's a fragment. So basically you have a nested component tree, but the final HTML is mostly flat. Like I don't know if this example actually shows it at all, but like no, it doesn't, because there's nesting here. But like it's quite possible that you can have, like if we didn't put this in a UL, for example, it's quite possible that like all the elements for this app could have been at the top level, even though the components are nested and there's things lazy loading in and out. And Solid doesn't create DOM elements when it hydrates. But what it does do is try and reset up the reactive graph, which means it executes in all the code coming down. But then when it gets to the part where it says create an element or set an, like that kind of thing, it just basically skips it. And for diff reconciliation, it basically goes through and collects everything for all the like arrays and arrays and arrays and arrays, when you're returning all these fragments. But then it like it matches up the elements, and it doesn't try to insert them or something, because like they're already inserted. It basically skips the diff. The challenge is when you have streaming, the state of the initial page that you see might have like this loading thing, like, all right, I turned off the server. Give me 2 seconds. Oh no, it's because it's not streaming right now. Let's start stream. Okay. You'll see like the loading states and stuff. Like basically there's intermediate states that come in through the HTML before it's like all done. And for that reason, what you're looking at the time that you start partially hydrating something might not be the final state, but you need to know what the initial state is, so that when the next change happens, that you can like diff it properly. So if something runs once and sees, the lazy component not there, or sees a loading state or something, and then like it picks up again. Like we have to make sure that we can get the state that's saved as like the previous value in these effects, essentially closed over, to equal what it should be at the beginning of when you do the actual work, which sounds kind of complicated, and it is kind of complicated. I was using all these mechanisms of trying to like get the DOM elements, from the calculated array. Let's close that. And I realized that none of them actually worked, and all I needed to do was actually grab the DOM elements out of the range whenever it runs, which is a little bit more expensive in theory, but it means that we're never out of sync, which fixes a whole bunch of weird issues that I was facing with like portals and stuff. I'm actually pretty stoked about this one. It might even fix this one right here that I haven't looked at yet, but like it fixes the oldest issue, oldest open bug on Solid repo. We have 50 issues right now. Most of them are enhancement, but the oldest open bug here, December 10th, 2022, portal overriding lazy loaded sibling after hydration under specific conditions. Like these are kind of weird edge cases, but and it also addresses another one of these duplicate components showing with lazy component or something. Anyway. More technical than you probably need to see, but it's I'll show the code anyways, just because that's what we do here. But what I ended up doing is, if we go into DOM expressions, is source client. There's this block here. When we realize the incoming value is an array, and the reason onioning matters is because we have to there's two ways to handle fragments. You can either put in a bunch of markers, or you can keep track of the array of elements or like the range of elements. And the problem with putting in markers, like we need it initially in hydration to gather them back together. But the problem with markers in general is that when you have this nesting, you can have markers next to markers, next to markers, next to markers. And you have to make sure that like they match the front and the end bit. And then old Solid used to do this before, where we put in all these markers and match them all in. But it was actually kind of expensive to do all the bookkeeping and remove them. And if markers or like children changed, like, because it's the adjacent thing, like you keep on trying to optimize to remove markers or like reuse markers, and it makes it really ugly and hard, where we just keep track of the arrays. I just went in here, and this is like the check if you're hydrating. If the new value coming in doesn't exist, we're just going to keep it with what we have. But otherwise, just grab what's in the DOM right now and use that as the previous state. It's such a simple fix. It's way simpler than anything I was doing before. I was avoiding it because I didn't want to read the DOM. This is not the funnest thing to do right here, admittedly. I'm going to have to perf test that against the version I do with the markers. It might be possible that it's not worth doing this and it's better to do this. But essentially, this ends up fixing a whole bunch of hydration issues. Just random edge cases. So just put it out there. So I'm excited about that one. I don't think I give the best explanation there. So let's continue on. Okay, this one's kind of fun. I like that HTML. I mean, I don't love this, but HTML is just weird, right? Like it's self-healing, and sometimes like really gets in your way because like people forget to put in table bodies, and then suddenly it's like, oh, can't like walk the thing properly. And in the client, it's not bad, but let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's just open a console and have some fun. So if I, for example, if I make, let's make it T, document.create element, and we'll make a template element and we'll call it T, okay? So we have T, and if we go t.inner HTML equals, you can tell I do this a lot, a table, but let's forget the table body. Let's just put in tr, and let's put a td in it, /td, and then be like, hi, okay. When we check what that inner HTML is, you might go, oh, I expect it to be the same thing. But the problem is that if we actually go t.innerHTML, to our horror or surprise, maybe not to everyone, there's this extra element here that just snuck its way in, right? Like, why is it here? Now, we have a whole thing at compile time to check for some of these. Like when they're inside the same template, we can tell. But when they're not inside the same template, then it gets a little harder, because what if this template has tr and the table's somewhere separate? Because if I go in here and I go like this and remove the table. Okay, sweet. Now, unsurprisingly, we don't have the extra t-body, right? And what's funny about in the browser is if I go, let's make a table equals document.create element table, right? And I go table.append our t.inner HTML. Actually, we're going to go t.content dot. Is it a single child? Yeah. So we'll do first child.clone node. Why not? Okay. Right. I'm just going to clone it. Actually, I should clone it deep. Sorry. When I look at my table.inner HTML, you're not going to see the t-body. So because I did them separately, the browser actually is fine. So if you create the elements one at a time, or don't hit one of these rules within the parser, then it actually doesn't add the extra element. Okay, so that means in a lot of cases where we don't actually analyze, we are fine because the browser can handle it. But you know what the problem comes in? SSR. Because when SSR, we do append everything together. And basically means that if we authored it in two separate things, where one component's a table and the other one's a tr, like in a for loop or something, and then we output this to the browser in the HTML, like during certain SSR, the browser does add the t-body there. So all of those edge cases that are kind of forgiven by the browser by manually appending across templates do happen during SSR. So a good number of SSR errors, and these ones are hard to track down. It would be cool if we had like better tooling around this, we could figure this out, but you'd have to do it in dev. Like you could never do this on prod because it'd be way too expensive to be like parsing the strings after you finished rendering them. This is not an easy as you go kind of thing. But basically all the benefit like that we get by accident in the browser kind of get around this issue hits us on SSR. And as I said, a bunch of SSR hydration issues are actually just this, where people have malformed their HTML, but we can't really tell them. Like we don't actually know if that's the issue. And yeah, this was the negative side of it. But on the positive side, there's like some weird things that can work for you. Like, I mean, we were looking at this in Solid before, where if I go to t.inner HTML, right, and I got rid of these closing tags and just went trtd high, guess what? It adds the closing tags back in. So you can actually compress the template considerably by not doing the closing tags. In fact, anything on the last branch of it is pretty safe to do, and which we do in Solid since 1.7. Of course, we went through a headache in 1.7 because there are special rules where you can remove closing tags like in the middle, nested. And the first few versions of 1.7 were painful for people because I missed a few cases. And over time, I think in the end, we're actually in a really good place now, but I still made it an opt-in feature of the compiler instead of automatic, where basic stuff like this example, the compiler automatically does, but more advanced stuff we don't. So like if you go into playground.solidjs, don't remember what I was doing here. Probably a talk looking at that. And if I go in here, what you're going to see for the template is literally just a button that doesn't get closed. And if I put another div around it to kind of prove my point, you're going to see div button and doesn't close. So like easy stuff like that, we actually build into the template. But what's interesting is there are, well, let's just take this one. There are more tricks you can do with leveraging this. Like another one that I like that comes up is you can, let's do this, t.inner HTML equals, if you just go exclamation mark here, that's actually gets processed as a comment. If I go t.content.firstChild, what you're going to see is that this is a comment node. So you can actually shortcut the extra dashes and stuff. While we can technically do this from the server, all these kind of optimizations, I've been keeping away from them because people use HTML validators on their SSR stuff. So I don't necessarily do this. But for our internal templates we use for cloning in the client and stuff, there's really no reason not to leverage this to reduce the output of the strings, right? So this, you know, if you've ever seen, I guess it might even show up in Solid's SSR, client rendering hydration. We're not going to see it here because there's no, let's force it. Count. Yeah. See, you can see these exclamation markers kind of sneak their way in. Or even in client rendering, it's probably there in that example. Exactly. It's just an exclamation mark. This is just another example of where we can compress the templates slightly rather than doing full comments. So we have one new trick in this vein for Solid 1.8, and that is, let's see. Okay, this will make a div with a button. We just saw that, right? Inner HTML, there's our div with our type button. But you actually don't need the quotes here. If you look at what our inner HTML looks like, the quotes come back. As it turns out, quotes are actually optional in many cases in HTML. Marco actually uses this during server rendering because it actually drastically reduces the output of like these giant HTML files that get sent from eBay. Some people find this, you know, questionable or whatnot because of the validation thing. I thought about adding this ability behind an option, but generally for our internal templates, we don't actually care. So this is actually just pure win, essentially, for our templates to be able to do this kind of thing. It's a very simple thing, but again, all in the name of reducing bytes. Might not make the biggest difference, you know, in your app, but it's a cool thing that we can do where we can use HTML to our benefit. Yeah, sorry, about earlier, it's not just tables. There's a lot of examples. We actually have in DOM expressions, we go to Babel, JSX DOM expression, there's actually a dependency here that I got from a different framework. Validate HTML nesting. Let's look at this package. This was added, I think, in Solid 1.6, but it's basically, there's a whole bunch of rules, like you can't nest anchors and anchors and all this stuff, and this basically checks from our framework standpoint. This is a good question, and probably we need to do more benchmarking on. I haven't seen this be impactful, but that is a fair question. I think the thing is that the parser, yeah, this is a good question. I think the timing of this doesn't impact, it doesn't meaningfully at least impact like what happens afterwards, because it happens so early on in the chain. in any case, yeah, this is kind of the fun of this whole approach, and it's interesting to see other frameworks hit this now. Obviously, Lit uses templates, but like Svelte and Vue are probably going to be hitting these kind of issues for the first time now, because they're moving to this approach. Stop crashing in template function. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Oh, yeah. Okay, you're talking about it. Yeah, I didn't mind this error because it's like the very easy error for me to know that something went wrong. It's possible for us to probably make a more human readable error. Maybe in dev mode only. But you understand, like, the problem is, like, you need the code to check it. But yeah, template not being... But then we'd have to actually mock the template function. I mean... No, but it's getting the client version in the server, so that's not it. Yeah, I don't know. We could probably look at... It's not super high priority, because it's like... It's an unrecoverable error anyways if you hit this error, so... Well, it doesn't... It's been lazy since 1.7. Let me look at the function right now. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place on the compiler. It's been lazy since 1.7. Source. Template. There's some crap in here that I want to get rid of. Maybe I can do it. I'd be able to do it in 2.0, but now what it does is it only, when you call, this is for backwards compatibility on the clone node, but when you call the function return from the template now, it at that point it calls create, which is at which point it creates a template, or if it already exists, use the template and then it hoists it. So yeah, we call it lazily now. This was a nice little small improvement for hydration. It doesn't make a big deal for most things, but on hydration, we actually can now skip all the template initialization, especially on templates you may never use in the browser. So, I mean, this is, little small wins. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going. So that's a little explanation about template minimization. Okay, yeah, there's a couple things. Better guards on global scripts for micro frontends and things like Astro. I think you actually might have already seen this in the output here. We already did some stuff, but these kind of checks, like if already defined, don't run the thing, or like we had some before, but they didn't work completely. This is just a small kind of bug fix situation. It's in case people include this thing multiple times on the page, like in their micro front ends. Now they're not going to trample over each other. So yeah, I think this will make some people happy for those global scripts. Why we have those global scripts? That's how, like, if hydrate doesn't get called right away, we're able to still insert the stuff and do the streaming. Like we inline that little bit of JavaScript and it takes care of everything before the framework or your components load. Another small one, we're using $ instead of hashtags now because Nginx server-side includes. Comments are treated as special directives. I didn't know about that. A lot of fun. So it was breaking on people's setups. So I saw what React uses. React uses some $ thing. So I was like, okay, that should be fine. Like, again, it might even work better now because we have all these $ for compression. I don't know if the JavaScript compression and the HTML compression for inline scripts happen at the same time, but where you'll see this is, let me see if I can see it in here. Is it in here? Is there an example? I might not even have an example with these in here simply because, oh no, here it is. Yeah, there's no dynamic inserts. Yeah, see, $, it's minor. But yeah, this is most of the pieces that we've been working on for 1.8. But sorry, I just read this comment about Sloyd. I haven't heard about Sloyd in a while. Yeah, the compression of the whole file. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little tricks that we do here to help with compression, even stuff like getting these, like we actually bundle some of these things at the same time, because this data resolve on this promise here or this promise here actually is what triggers the next promise for suspense to undo. But those happen on two different microtasks. So we actually wait to serialize slightly so we have time to actually get this in and we don't have to send extra script tags, so we can send them in one flush. So there's a lot of times where like little batch things like that can improve compression. Yeah, they're just small little tricks that we added into the streaming approach here. Is 0.031 really the best? Yeah. It's a funny one. It takes time to hash them up. Ironically, like it's more expensive. So it like slows things down, and then like they're actually like these are actually good for compression, like because they're actually the same, like a lot of repeated bytes. So it's like, it'd be interesting to see more detailed studies on this. I know they're really ugly for people, but as a naive approach, they're not bad, right? So if like I had a clear win a different way, I might have been like, okay, let's do that. I mean, we still talk about it because we're like, can we come up with our own auto compression while we do it to like reduce the numbers? Like there's a lot of zeros. It's very holy. We need hierarchical IDs because JSX can execute out of order. So it's not, the order in the DOM is not sufficient to actually know what the hydration is because we don't have a virtual DOM. Everything happens immediately. I've looked at approaches that got us closer to virtual DOM, but then there's overhead there. So like, I'm okay with this for now. When we get more islands type stuff, these disappear when you're in like the server component land. So like, yeah, we'll have to measure this more carefully. Yeah, they're literally like the depth of the component tree. The more component depth you have, the longer these IDs get. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's one of those things. Okay, sweet. Yeah. Putting the link out there for the HTTP 203 video on it. That's where some, I guess I'm going to say former Chrome dev people, like, are any of them working on Chrome anymore? But they have a great kind of video podcast thing where they talk about different performance aspects in the browsers. So, all right. But yeah, this is mostly what I was putting in. I know 1.8 might not be the most exciting. It's just what it unlocks. There's one other bug request though that's kind of bugging me that I think is that I want to see if I can get in. And it's related again to those hydration script things. This was reported to me, and it kind of bugs me a little bit. Markdown. This probably doesn't belong in the main repo. Where is it? It's no, there's where is it? Sorry, there's an issue about this one. There's an issue about, we do something called event replaying. This one isn't exactly, I mean, did I classify this one as a bug? Maybe I should have. Basically, we got that script that we load on the page. Also, you're going to see this more and more commonly, which is kind of an interesting tension. Quick does it, React does it, we do it. We capture events before the code is loaded so we can do stuff with them, right? Like on one hand, you have this scenario where like, Remix was talking about progressive enhancement, right? And they're all like, we don't need to worry about slow hydration. The link always works. Yeah, but I mean, we can acknowledge that that's kind of, it's good, but it's also kind of terrible. Like it's terrible from the perspective of like, you know, I can pull out some of those slides on hydration or whatever. Like, say you got the slow device, slow network. It takes, you see that page after 3.5 seconds, and it takes another 3.5 seconds to hydrate. So it's like 7 seconds on some slow device. And you just happen to see it, and then it takes you, you know, half a second to react. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I want to go there about a second later. So at about the 6-second mark, right before it finishes hydrating, you click on something. And in that remix scenario, it goes, oh, okay, well, I know JavaScript, so I'm going to hit the link or whatever. And then it goes, sends the whole request to this, like the, you know, and it was something silly. It was like, I wanted to expand something. And that thing that you wanted to expand might have actually already been server rendered in the page. It was just hidden initially or something. But like you click on it, and then the remix or progressive enhanced approach, I shouldn't single out remix, like SvelteKit does it very well as well, goes, okay, well, let's go back to the server and refetch the page with the thing open. Right? So like something that would have, once the JavaScript loaded, taken 20 milliseconds now takes another 7 seconds, which is kind of brutal. So like there's this question of like, when is something interactive, right? Like technically you can interact with it the second it shows up, but everybody's been playing with these different approaches of how to manage the events during this window. React selective hydration. Quix does this async thing. And this is something that we added solid. And I didn't realize there's a little bit of a tension here. I haven't tried this example exactly, and I don't think they gave me a reproduction. But let's reproduce it right now. Why not? Let's do this. See, I think we can reproduce this inside our demo, because we have, I'm going to just get rid of the serializer stuff. We have essentially, actually no, this is still not good. Is it back to normal? Can't even tell anymore. Okay. Because we have one of our pages here that actually has an input device where the value is initially set to text, right? So in theory, we can go in here into Solid's source code and do something a little bit wrong to make this example exaggerated. So I think we can go in and go to web, and I think we wrap the hydrate call in here because for code splitting, I have this enable hydration, which means that if you never call hydrate, it tree shakes out all the code related to hydration. This little trick with rollup, I've showed this a couple times on stream, but it also means that I can do something kind of stupid, which does hydrate actually, oh, it does return something synchronously, but we're not going to use that thing we return, so we're like, screw it. We're just going to mess with stuff. We're going to like wait. I don't know, we can wait 6 seconds or something to hydrate, right? Let's see if this will, and let's build this. Whatever, I'll just use test, I'll build it. So I'm kind of curious about this scenario. Okay, what failed? TypeScript? Yeah, we don't care about you. I think we'll see that it will be cached in the TurboPack cache, hopefully, unless the test's failing actually. Oh, why does TypeScript ruins everything? Let me just see if it actually snuck it in here. Actually, I think we're just using WebJS. I could probably just hack it in the output too, but okay, it's in here. Okay, TypeScript, be quiet. All right, now let's build our stream example and start our stream example. Okay, doesn't really matter which example it is. Okay, and then let's refresh the page, and it works. Oh, this is interesting. Do you see the delay on that? Anyway, yeah, so we see the delayed hydration, right? So what I want to do here is I want to add some stuff. And then, what? It disappeared. See, with clicks, you don't notice this stuff because you just do it and you're fine. But someone pointed out, and it's funny because we actually do delegate the input device stuff. So like this should work, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't work is because of hydration, because we actually do a passover. And I've been debating a lot about this because the whole world scenario of hydration has been changing. In the beginning, we used to say, whatever we can, let's just make it the client get to a reasonable state. And, you know, that was fine because then the client took over. But recently, and this is true of stuff like server components and quick and stuff, we start saying like, okay, no, the server was right. The server did the rendering initially. The client shouldn't like update it. Like the classic question, if you put a date timestamp inside a component, you know, there's the old thing, well, hydration mismatch, right? But like, how do you handle this scenario, right? And let's do it right now in Solid because we can. And we can very clearly see the effect of hydration because we have our 6-second timeout. So let's go into the example here, shared, and we're on the settings page, and let's just like put in something like date.now, okay? And what's the best way to do this? Because we're not going to see it. I mean, we can just console log it, right? Like, do I even need to stick it in here to make my point? I mean, sure, I will, but let's do this. Let's build and start. So this is kind of related to what Alexis was talking about, right? About this serializable value thing. Because my question for you is, what should we see when we load this page? Yeah, I wish I had a poll to the chat. What should we see when we load this page? Time on the server or the time 6 seconds later? I mean, it's a trick question a little bit, but I figure someone's got an opinion about this somewhere. No opinions. Server time. Okay, there we go. That's a good one. But yeah, server. Okay. The thing is, classically, the answer was client time. That was always the answer. In Solid, I did change this, right? But classically, it was client time. That was the expectation. So 947. Okay. Okay, it's hydrated. Now we see that when the console log went in the client, it's 203. And then here we see 947. So it never updates. And this has thrown a lot of people off because they expect it now. Like, don't get me wrong, if it was a signal and then we did like something like a create a factor, we did an update and then we updated it and changed it from that initial state. Yeah, definitely you're going to see the new value if it keeps on updating. But during hydration, we did not change the time. So this is kind of like a mental switch that's been happening here because classically it would have been, yeah, the client tries to recover it, and if it can't, try to do the best with it. But now, because of like resumable frameworks and stuff, the expectation is that hydration should not change this. Because if we're optimizing away hydration, how could we ever expect the client to change? Like the server, like if we're getting to a point where we're doing less and less work during hydration, we have to trust the server and not expect side effects from hydration to occur, including that math.random or that date timestamp that you put in here. That's the trajectory of where things are heading. It's so funny. When I joined the Marco team, I argued pretty strongly that it should be this client value. That's the expectation. But that's a dead end. Like you basically don't get to move forward from there. You don't get to optimize from there because you're saying, I have to run this code on the client. So this is an interesting shift of base, right? Because what we're suggesting here is the reason that the high gets wiped out when it hydrates is because, well, let's look at, let me see if sources, JavaScript. Let's look at the compiled output, settings.js. Here we go. When we hydrate, we create a render effect that sets the value of the text node. So it overrode it. Now, here's the thing. If you set an attribute or a property to the same value, the browser like shortcuts that pretty quickly. It's not terribly expensive. I never went in and added the code to do checks for this stuff because like if the browser goes, oh, you're setting the same value, you know, like the same string or whatever, it basically shortcuts right at the beginning and it's not terribly expensive. Well, I mean, what I'm getting, yes, this is kind of decided at the compile step. The reason is I told you we don't create elements when we hydrate, but we do set attributes and properties currently. I wasn't quite ready to go the full way, but and there are exceptions, right? Like there are some property, like anything that can be used as an attribute will work, right? When it shoots out, it'll work when it starts up. But like there's some, if you're on the server rendering and there's a property that doesn't exist as an attribute, then like you can't possibly server render it in that initial state, and you do have to set the property when you get there. But in the case of Solid on the server, there are a few things that get treated as attributes, like value and Boolean attributes, but they get treated as properties in the client for performance reasons, for managing reasons. So like this is kind of like an interesting tension because, I mean, this is we can continue to do less during hydration. We know when we're hydrating, so we can like set attribute is a perfect example. This is a helper function. If we could have code inside set attribute that's like if hydrating, don't do anything, and it'll tree shake out when you don't use it. But we literally just have to go in and just add a line that's like if shared config.context return. By this point, like this isn't a reactive ID, but by this point, the reactive expression will have ran. Like if this was set property instead of l.value, if we had a set property helper, you know, to make it more convenient, we could just like go set property $$4, comma string value plus text. At that point, accessing the text, making the reactive dependency, but then just not set the value. Because if we skip setting that value, then this example here works. We would be able to type it, and instead of it erasing, we're going to see something else. And actually, you know what? Let's see if we can make it do that, right? Can we, actually, maybe we can do it in the browser. What what do we want to do here? Can we do this fully from the browser? We might not be able to. Sometimes what we can do is we can go into the sources tab. We can find the JS, we can find the settings, and we can put a breakpoint like really high up. See this? Yeah, this is why we won't be able to get to it, because we won't have shared config here. Because I don't think I can go here in time. Yeah, and I won't be able to. Yeah, I won't be able to get it because by the time I type it in, okay, let's not do this in the browser. I was trying to think of a way I could like inline change it, but we're gonna we'll change the source code. We'll change the compiled output. So let's go stream lib. Perfect. There's a couple versions of settings here. Actually, this is server side, so public JS. Yeah, I'm gonna clear this folder and then we're gonna build it fresh again, and then we're gonna inline what we're thinking here. This is an accurate statement. Okay, so let's change this around. Let's import shared config. Like and then where we do this render effect, let's do something like this. Let's go, it's a little bit more verbose, but we're gonna change this to basically like the helper. I said, let's go const t equals text, and then value equals t, and then go if shared config.context return. Okay, that should work, right? Now let's see what happens. Oh, okay. What? I have a JavaScript error. It's probably because I did something wrong with shared config. Oh, it's from index. Sorry, my bad. It's not from index. It's from... Let's look at index. What does index do? Oh, interesting. Shared config is in an index, but it's not being exported. Okay, like, which is weird because it doesn't think it needs to export it. Shared config. We'll just... Okay, we're hacking it a little bit. Tree shaking is very powerful. Okay, let's just start it. All right. Get in here. See? At hydration time, the UI actually updated properly. And if I continue typing, it'll be fine. So, I mean, obviously this is really exaggerated, but it's cool. You can see it actually pick up as it finishes. So this is the kind of challenging world we live in right now, because it's like the path we're on is one where the server has to be right and everything you do has to be able to apply after the fact. So like, I might fix this one for this issue. It's kind of cool. Obviously this is an exaggerated case, but I don't know. This is mostly 1.8. You know. Hydration is a funny thing. Like, even when we talk about resumability, it's all a matter of like scale, because we can reduce the work being done significantly without going all the way. Like, this is not like a on-off switch kind of thing, right? So, like, it's tricky because I'm looking at this as both a combination. You want to find the primitives that make these things powerful and possible, and you also want to like not force everyone to world of crazy config. You want to make it rather automatic, but you know, yeah, it's interesting, right? This is what I mean. Like, this app takes 6 seconds to hydrate? When did it become interactive? You know, I don't know. This is, when am I interactive? This is what I wrote about in my article because I don't even know anymore. Someone mentioned earlier that event replay back is actually kind of terrible, and they're kind of right. There's like other issues with it, so it's like we keep on going further, but like it's never just a clear path. All right. Almost done my orange juice here. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. If people have other things they want to see, you know, come maybe by the Discord's next channel and talk to me, or, you know, mention stuff. Like, be understanding that I'm not really interested in adding new features, but rather setting us up properly for like future, essentially. But yeah, this is 1.8. It's not about it. Hopefully this is just a lot of just little niceties improvements, better hydration, more predictable behavior, just small little things that will, you know, I couldn't do as a patch version for all of them, but will give us a lot more power. Okay, so what do I want to talk about next after 1.8? There's This Week in JavaScript, and I can kind of go off on that, obviously. But I think that article that called out Solid is probably worth going over even before This Week in JavaScript, so we don't like hijack all of This Week in JavaScript. Talk about 1.9, yeah. I think that, let me see here. Where am I? It's communities. No, I want profile. I think this was a pretty cool article. You don't see a lot of people, like, Solid hasn't been big enough to see a lot of people write negative stuff about it, or things that like aren't about things that aren't the best. Like, most of the complaints I've seen about Solid, legitimately, like especially on Twitter and stuff, have been like stuff that's just like completely irrelevant. It's almost like frustrating to even talk about it, because people are like, you know, like all that React pushback and the two-way binding and all that stuff, and you're just like, what the hell are you guys talking about? You guys clearly have never looked at the library, or it's just a React clone, or just like yeah, the number of people who have used Solid more than 2 minutes who complain about destructuring is a very low number. Like, you're aware of it, and then you're like, you know, it'll catch you a few times, but then like it's not like it's kind of like, who cares? But these are the things that we fight over on syntax on Twitter, and like these are the things that you know people make a big deal out of, like, you know, these like very, very surface level things. So like, when someone comes up with legit complaints and stuff, like I appreciate that a lot. I mean, to be fair, I feel like people, like, there's some responses here to this, you know, because I said I love the article and it's kind of critical of Solid in some places, and there's some people going, you know, about this whole thing, you know, people, you know, setting an example, not taking it personal, and all this stuff. And I'm like, I wonder if those people have been to our Discord. I sometimes we talk about the Discord not being the friendliest, but one common thread on the Discord is there's a lot of people who know what they're talking about, or at least claim to know what they're talking about, that pick apart decisions in Solid every day, hourly, all over the Discord, because we attract a lot of people like that. Other framework authors, people very critical and stuff about performance because I made one decision to lean one way versus another way. Even when I posted this article in the Discord, it started a whole bunch of other discussion on this. We see this all the time, so it's like, and in that sense, I don't think a lot of the framework authors are actually like, we're kind of all aware of this kind of stuff. Like, we don't take it terribly personally because like you can't walk 2 steps without someone telling you that they could do it better, and it's like, well, okay, let's talk through that. Let's see what's going on, and so like. Yeah, I think this article has a lot of really good points, which is why I wanted to actually talk about it. Let's see here. Did I already close it down? Yeah. This is not. It's only got 34 likes. Not enough people have seen this yet. I had one nit with the article, but which we'll talk about. But let's go through this. SolidJS pain points and pitfalls. Yeah, and actually I haven't clapped this one enough. Let's get them going. One thing, support your medium art writers. You can clap up to 50 times. So just something to know. Okay, there we go. All right. Yeah, we describe various non-obvious aspects of working in SolidJS as well as conveniences I've encountered over the years of working in SolidJS. Yeah, I could tell immediately when I read this article, this person's worked in SolidJS for a long time. And I've worked on SolidJS a long time. So like, it's very obvious to me where these issues are of course, API function interfaces. All this will be redesigned, released new major versions of the library, and many of the points will lose their relevance. It solves more problems that it creates. I like that there's this positive spin. Okay, so let's look at the list and see how that fits in. ClassList. Okay, I'm going to say it right here. ClassList was a mistake. I know that. I've known that for years. I mean, I even kind of knew it before 1.0. I was trying to find an easy way to get off it, but I was too worried about disappointing people. Like, ClassList is that thing that you want in like every framework. Like Marco has probably the nicest ClassList thing. Of course, Marco does, right? Marco is the best at everything. But like, it's very awkward to have 2 props handling the same thing. You could kind of merge them together, but then you're kind of like taking ownership for every single thing. Like, ClassList is like, if there's something that like on my list of like things that are such an obvious mistake that I wish I could avoid it, like ClassList should have been on that list. It's just like, it couldn't be clearer. I went through a phase where I was like, okay, I could merge them together, and then class could handle all the stuff. But the problem is, it's not even nice for the developers, because we start seeing this actually in the router, because we have capital A anchor. As soon as you start wrapping components like style components in this, and you're spreading stuff through, like, there is some awkwardness, because like, how should I put this? On one hand, you have this problem of stuff inside the spreads and stuff outside the spreads not being aware of each other. Compiler can't solve that problem. But on the other hand, you as a component author, you decide to use the class property. You go, and now that it's merged together and ClassList isn't special, you don't know what you're getting. Are you getting an object? Are you getting a string? Are you getting all the stuff? Like, if you support it in that same way that it works through spreads and whatnot, like, sure, a direct spread will work, but if you have to intercept it, you have no clue what you're dealing with. And now suddenly you have to handle all these different edge cases as you try it. And you could be like, okay, like, make a helper function that's like merge class. Wait, you mean make CL? Like, you're kind of in this weird zone where it works kind of well like a directive, but the reason directives work is because they don't work through spreads. I know that people hate this, and like, they don't work through components. It's like once you have to like have these special things coming through as props that have special meaning, then everyone has to worry about it. It's not contained within your component. It's like people start using this against whatever, and then you as a poor component author now have to worry about all this crap. So like merging it doesn't really solve it. Keeping it separate has the reactivity ping pong problem, right? Like problems ClassList sets individual class properties, where class just sets the class, which overwrites. So they actually blank each other out. It's possible, but dangerous to mix class and classes, right? Therefore, download CLX and use it. Yeah, like we're going to have to, I have a deprecation path here by turning it into a directive or something in my mind, so people who use it locally, but this is very high on my list of like acts for 2.0. If there's a thing that would make us unpopular, this is it. But this is my one of my biggest mistakes in designing Solid. ClassList is terrible, like absolutely terrible. Everybody wants it, but it is terrible. Yeah. This is our Angular 2 moment right here. If a component gets a complicated class property, what's the use case for intercepting instead of passing it through to something else? Well, I guess my question is, how do you add additional classes, change additional classes to it? I guess the idea is I guess it's like a flattened thing where you just like pass in a new array and then add your classes to the end of the array and go like array props.class : my classes. Change it then in 1.8. I mean, it's supported in Solid so I can't remove it and be like, oh, sorry guys. Yeah. So yeah, you do this, but yeah, I mean, is this just, yeah, you basically you make an array and then you extend the array. I mean, we could talk about this, but is it really worth it? The whole reason I added ClassList, is because it does something really, really powerful. It does this. Let's add something. Hello count. It's able to toggle individual classes independently without doing the merging. And from a performance standpoint, this is incredibly powerful. And it could even detect things that are static, that can't change, like, and actually go, okay, hello updates, but world here is actually, where is it? Am I not seeing it? Did I make a typo somewhere? But it should be able to tell that world is static and hoist it out of this. Why am I not? Where is world? Oh, it's so static. It's freaking in the template. Sorry, it's up here. No, let's do. This is gonna be hard to do. Okay, okay, I think I can do it. Const world equals function, and then function. So the reason I'm doing this is because we're so smart, we can hoist stuff in ways you wouldn't believe. But I can't put a function call in here because it would, let's see, does that work? Okay, I think I got it. I fooled it. Yeah, there we go. ClassList in effect, ClassList not in effect. Yay. The reason I did the stupid function thing is literally if I went here and went like stuff, it would still hoist it into the template. We do static analysis and we can tell what can be resolved at compile time, so it can actually do further optimizations even for stuff that's not directly in the JSX. Anyways. The other reason that I love this also is, do you notice that to make this work, it's pure DOM API? There is no runtime. Like this completely compiles away. Like there's basically no like library involved to make ClassList work. Right before 1.0, I had this idea that I was like, okay, screw this. Svelte knows what they're doing. Force it to be a compiler, right? Right? What if we just do this? Because then this works the same. Create the effect for the class list, and there's no expectation that this works elsewhere, right? Because you can't spread this, it's a directive or whatever. So like, and let me double check the world scenario here. Okay, yeah. So this scenario, sorry. This scenario isn't smart enough to hoist up, but I mean, I think it's actually, it could be. Anyways, but the problem with this one is there's no dynamic syntax, and like, there's no way, like I can't, illegal, I'll put something in here, like can't do this. You could do some silly stuff like this. You could be like, what happens if you add a $sign? You know, you can get into a world of compiler thing and then say like, this way you can say what property works, and then like, you get what I'm getting at here, right? Like this world could replace this world, or some crazy thing that probably won't work with TypeScript. But the ClassList is just really bad from a composability standpoint. What if you just remove class? Yeah. So I mean, I feel for you here. ClassList sucks. It's very obvious to me that it sucks. Because basically the whole reason we did this whole optimization basically largely goes out the window if we merge everything to class, and then like you're dealing with these kind of opaque objects you don't understand. I mean, I was even debating, I was like, what if you like make class a special property and then put it on a component, and then you could like compile it at like the component level? Like what if the support for component directives wasn't actually so that it passed something through, but that it actually did a pre-process on the component props as they come in? You know, then you could say like ClassList on the outside always ends up on a string when you access it on the inside. Like stuff like that is more interesting. But in either case, ClassList as it is today is terrible. To be fair, these features I'm showing here, like the fact that this works, we've had it since 1.0. I just haven't advertised it. It's been a couple years now. Class name was not right all along. Okay. So yeah, anyway, this is, ClassList sucks. I don't 100% have a solution here. We should talk about it, but ClassList is not good. Let's keep on going. Yeah, it's the unfortunate thing, and this is a place where I guess you could blame JSX, because there is style JSX and we have solid style JSX. It just, the solutions don't feel nice because they have to be scoped to the template level, the component level, like, but not like the component level. So like, it's very different with SFCs how they work with scoping. It's interesting because solutions like Remix and actually Vinci from Nikhil handle scoping in a really clever way that they actually reset it like on routes, which means that you can get pretty far with basic JavaScript because it actually removes and adds JavaScript dynamically as stuff changes. But yeah, I mean, it's just that basically for the freedom of being able to use JSX everywhere, like, and make it portable, scoping kind of starts sucking. Like you could probably come up with some APIs for it, but it doesn't feel as nice. Like compiler macros are probably one way that you could do it. Like kind of like our server $, you could be like style $, but like even figuring out how that applies, and yeah, it's SFCs definitely have an advantage on style scoping. But yeah, I mean, this is important because CSS modules is actually the main reason why I wanted this scenario, because I want, like, with ClassList you can just pass like the condition and then put like in the CSS module. Like I did world stuff, but this could be like world could be like, you know, whatever, the thing you import from CSS modules. Okay, so yeah, ClassList is, yeah. Directives, yes. God, another feature they're not my favorite, but yeah. They're so awkward that I have not met people who actually use them. Yeah, which is probably, there's a few form libraries that use them. It's probably it's probably like a subconscious thing of why they ended up so awkward, because this is a thing that people wanted, but directives are kind of a little bit grating against the composability factor. Like they kind of butt up against each other. And I have to admit, this was an oversight on my part, and I want to talk about this because they're saying that like typing them sucks, and I agree, but I mean, you don't have any choice with JSX. Like you have to do some kind of typing for directives. The main problem is, I mean, same problem with the web components too. The main problem is you can't put directives in one file and use them in another because the bundler simply cut them out of the code. Can they be used? Will they work? They will. The way it's written, not really. Yeah. And the thing is, it's not the bundler that cuts them out. This is, again, all TypeScript's fault. I mean, if you watch my stream enough, you'll understand why, like, I can blame TypeScript for almost everything. It's not like bundlers have multiple phases. You go at rollup, and the way the plugins work and the transform, and they go through these phases, and then like the actual tree shaking doesn't happen till almost the end. So if you have some cool directive here and you use it here, Solid will transform this into something. Well, let's look what Solid, what does Solid transform this cool code to? Let's look. Where is this article? The playground actually has a whole bunch of special processing. And the funny thing is, I didn't realize this problem at first. Let's just whatever. Can I get the output here without it? Oh, right. There we go. Yeah, sweet. The compiler turns it into use cool directive element some signal or whatever, and you import it and it's used. See, like this This will work with tree shaking, no problem, right? Like it should not get tree shaken away, right? But TypeScript, let's see here, TypeScript, what is it? TypeScript playground. Let's see if I can do this in the playground somewhere. Can I make multiple files in the playground? Let's see. You don't see this import statement. Let me go create signal. Still not. And then let me call create signal here. And now the stuff comes in. The thing is, the reason TypeScript itself actually does tree shaking, and it does it before any other transforms have happened. And there's no way to, as far as I know, to actually get in front of TypeScript's transform. So basically, it takes it out of your hands. Essentially, even though the JavaScript code that we generate will know not to tree shake, TypeScript has already removed it by this point, because when it looks at the file, it doesn't see it being used. It will see like, okay, div, you know, and then it'll see what am I, create signal, right? So let's go use create signal equals whatever. Like even if you, this is obviously not on, where's the config, ts config, JSX preserve, close. It will get rid of the import ahead of time. And the reason for this is because TypeScript has to worry about other bundlers. So the problem is, if it doesn't remove its type imports, like if you went like import type or something like this, then TypeScript easily knows, okay, it's a type, I should remove it. But because types weren't required, like you didn't have to say import type and you can just import the thing even when it's a type, they had to find a way to remove the stuff that could be types, so further downstream stuff didn't choke on it. So like, I think there's a setting that's like along the lines of preserve value imports. Is this it? There is a setting that lets you TypeScript not tree shake it out, but then you have to better make sure that every single type you import actually puts type denoted in the right place, because otherwise you're going to get a type show up in your final build output and it's going to choke on it and be like, I don't know what type accessor is or what accessor is, even though it should be gone. So when I say it's TypeScript's fault, it's not like they're trying to do their best with a crappy situation, and the support at this on a language level didn't exist originally, but it is also completely their fault because there's nothing I can do about it. So like, this isn't how bundlers work. This is completely TypeScript's doing. So should have we designed an API that TypeScript screwed over so badly? Probably not. The ironic part is I didn't add directives till right before 1.0 release because TypeScript couldn't do this kind of typing. And then I was waiting for months, and then they supported it. In fact, it was worse than them not being able to do this typing. If you go back to older versions of TypeScript, let's see if I can go back to Playground 4.0 or something. And then they couldn't even, look at this, what they output. This is preserve. They couldn't even output namespace attributes. They'd actually make them into two different attributes, a Boolean attribute and another attribute in preserve mode. Like, they were completely broken before this point. So like, yeah, I mean, at least they fix that, and then they add the ability to do string typing. I was like, okay, we have a path forward. People have been asking for this feature, and I was like, I liked how easy Svelte just import was, and I was like, I did a few simple tests. I mostly program in JavaScript, not TypeScript, and I was like, okay, this works. We're good. Put it out, and then find out like a month later that basically everyone getting it to work had to do a bunch of hacks to get around TypeScript. So like, yeah, I mean, this is definitely a pain point. I've looked at register patterns for them, like kind of similar to what Vue does. The problem is it, like, directives in themselves are challenging in that, like, having them work with spreads, like they're really good on native elements, but they're not, again, very composable. And I think it makes them a bit awkward, right? When you want that transparency, when you want to just get a component and be able to use its props and stuff, directives, are kind of awkward. The thing is, even in Svelte, they only work on native elements, not on components, to my understanding. I don't know if they've changed that recently, but like, this has always been like a kind of non-composable feature. So again, you're fighting TypeScript basically at every point. I thought, as I said, so in a sense, this is a failure on our side as a judgment call. It's usually not a good idea to fight TypeScript too hard. And this one was probably just trying a little bit too hard. I think there's some power to them. I'm not sure yet. I like the idea that, like, if ClassList were to die, this is a natural place for it to go. I know it's sad to make directives like a deprecation thing. There are other, like, non-custom directives we do support. It's tricky because dynamic needs certain things because it's just a component wrapper. If dynamic can be made special, I think a lot of the use cases for directives could probably be handled better. But yeah, most of the part, like, we use them for attrs and prop indicators, which can help, for like interop with the browser, the fact like some things are attributes, some things are properties, especially the web components. Like there are things where we need to put this kind of extra metadata in. So I don't see us, like, custom directives give this sort of interesting zone. I don't generally recommend them, but like, I could see where they might be valuable, but it feels like you just have to kind of accept them for what they are as not being composable, and kind of go from there, or they really need more rethink. And it's pretty hard because every time I kind of go through those cycles, yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, I can see it. Okay, so let's look, prop wrapping. Right, okay. Yeah, see, almost all the examples where people like picking apart this stuff involves math.random. Like, you basically, this is probably why I never hit this case, but there's like, there's actually, it's not just math.random. It's also like things that read from the DOM. I think we need to better outline when certain life cycles would happen. Prop wrapping is essential. It's unavoidable. Whether you wrap it or the compiler wraps it, it has to happen, right? Every time you click a button, you see different value. Why? Yeah, because you're calling math random. So what this talks about is you can use once. And once is kind of a hack. At one point, I really wanted to be explicit, and then we kind of loosened up on it, and once was our replacement. But once is tricky. I don't know if I could say that any solution that depended on once could be considered canonical, so to speak. The problem here is that if you call a function inside JSX, we take it to be lazy. It's kind of fundamental like prop destructuring. I'm interested in this one mostly in that I don't know how real world, like I can see people getting hit by this, but I just don't know how actually important this one is, because it's like, it is an interesting one, because like it's kind of necessary for the automation, but on the other hand, it's like there were frameworks before that didn't do this kind of automated wrapping, and they like, it's so funny that I'm taking this line when like you know, you have Vue and Svelte very far on this like automated side, and then like I'm kind of more in this middle ground zone, which means that I'm kind of combating it on both sides. But like this is, in my opinion, largely what made Solid usable in the first place, the prop wrapping. So it's kind of like, it is consistent in that functions are evaluated lazily. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I'd be interested to know kind of scenarios where more people hit this one. I can see why this is maybe unexpected at first, but it's also like how everything works. So, I mean, once is a solution. The other solution is to just hoist it up like this, right? Another solution, yeah, I mean, that's basically, yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on this one? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this one is pretty fundamental. See, these ones we can address because like mistake, awkward design. I'm not sure what to do with this one. This one I think is probably deserves to go in the list. Like there's always that list like where people, you know, they complain about React and they're like, because of blank, and the React team's like, yeah, but that's the trade-off. That's how it's supposed to work. Kind of like our destructuring. This kind of goes in that bucket, I think. Like if you accept destructuring, you kind of accept this. The idea is for us, create memo or compute it or something is a way of marking that, hey, this is something we want to store or that we want to like derive, you know, be calculated. So like this is even awkward from like a component authored standpoint because it requires knowledge on both sides. Like you as a component author have to decide that, hey, this prop always needs to be static. So like maybe you should be doing this anyways, because if not, there's like this accidental room of it ending up being dynamic when you didn't intend it to be dynamic. But maybe you want to be able to support both cases, which in case you should treat it always as dynamic. Then it's really on the caller, and that's what I feel like. This is on the caller less than it's on the component author. If the component author wants to expose something that could be dynamic or static, then they write their stuff in the best way possible. You, user, who decides that you're going to generate a random number, like, that's on you, right? Like, because like the problem is right here. That's the problem. It's not even here, not here. The problem is here when you said like, hey, I'm going to pass a prop that could change, and it's going to be lazily evaluated. memoizing every prop would be terrible for performance. You basically end up in like view territory. Yeah, like that's just not. Yeah, and it's impossible to tell. Yes, like. I mean, you can do stuff where you can go like, oh, there's nothing reactive here, so then I can just node recycle. That might be worth testing again. But I generally, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. There are some techniques like node recycling where you can like basically go, I don't, like, here's the thing. If you detect nothing reactive while you run a function, then like, you know, it can never change. Like something has to be reactive on the first run for it actually to be an actual memo. Otherwise, it can be just a memo or just a function. So what you can do, or just a value. So what you could do is basically just wrap that value in a function call as the getter, and then basically throw away the reactive internals, and not even throw it away because that's bad for garbage. You could just like keep it around and be like, look, next time you need a reactive node, use this one instead of creating another one. This was something I experimented with early before I did the effect grouping. So it is a viable path. But I just kind of putting in there, generally memoizing every prop would be excessive. Yeah, I was not aware that each prop access is running this function. Like the thing is, it's very this getter lazy evaluation of props, whether they're JSX, whether they're functions, like basically everything is lazy evaluated. Yeah. It did as well. I had to do some interesting stuff for the like stores and stuff around understanding if stuff is getters. And the thing is, props in Solid sometimes are getters and sometimes are proxies. The proxies do define a getter on them, so like I guess there's like some, maybe this still works, but essentially because if the shape of the object could change, we can't even use getters. We have to use proxies here, which is something that Solid does that I don't know all reactive libraries do, because it's complicated, but it actually is very powerful if you want to really remake all the patterns you find in a framework like React, with like dynamic objects being spread in and stuff. Like the proxies are the only way to actually do it. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, so this one goes on the permanent list, where I don't know if this one's actually solvable. It's just like kind of innate. And I think it's important that the people who pass, like when you pass props down, to know what you're doing. Untrack reactive things. You can imagine a situation we call back on a component directly inside to create effect. It looks quite ordinary, but do not underestimate the danger of such code. Yeah. Yeah. This is a good one. I think everyone should be aware of this one. It's interesting. Sometimes people make an argument for this for scope-based reactivity. What I mean by that is like reactivity can't leave the function scope. Like if you call props at event handler, it can't be tracking. Svelte works this way with Svelte 5, to my knowledge. The only challenge there is like, again, composition gets really sacrificed under the scope-based thing. And it's funny because Svelte 3 and 4 like also have this kind of hoisting thing as like a secret way to untrack by just hoisting out a function. I've never gotten used to it. I think for some people maybe it makes sense. But yeah, this is an interesting one. Like again, calling an event handler inside an effect is interesting, right? But this is why we have Untrack and we don't do peak. It's precisely for these kind of scenarios where you're doing some kind of like, if you're giving the end user an API, like say a map function or something where they can define the code coming in, you want to untrack wrap that, because it's up for them to decide like their reactivity, not you. So like you can pass in reactive variables, but they should be the ones describing it. It's the reason that directives work the way they do. Like, we commonly keep this pattern of aggressively untracking when passing scopes back to the end user, because that's what we believe. And I guess when it comes into your own user code, it's something to consider. But yes, this is something you could definitely get hit up on if you don't realize that your event handler is listening to stuff. Because if you think about it logically, if you have some effect that depends on some condition that calls an event handler that also depends on some signal or condition, what the effect is trying to output or do could change, right? Like the fact that like the effect, like the event handler console logs the count, right? And based on some condition, we choose whether to, run this thing. If the count changes, then and it's, an effect, should it update? Probably. What is the event? So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a solution to this one as well. But it is something I think people should be aware of. So this is definitely like a pitfall for people. So like when you're a library author, you definitely should think about where when you program, when you decide to track something and you want the end user to be able to, run code they define, you probably should be untracking it. Yeah, so I think this is just really good advice in general. Unless the expectation, the problem with this one is, and it's very obvious, is you think this is an event, you're not going to think that it's tracked. Yeah, for loops another example. Yeah, onCleanup inside a resource. Yeah, this is a good one as well. If you don't know why this doesn't work, it's because reactive scopes are synchronous. So after a wait, it's impossible to track, but it's also impossible to clean up or do anything along that side. If you put the onCleanup before the await, you're fine. But yeah, this is a good one. I think this will actually give you a warning or error in dev. So you will be caught on this one. We should actually take that kind of heuristic when we actually look at these again in a moment. This one will at least tell you you're doing something wrong, but it's tricky. We have no way to resume the context in the end user code after an await. It's not a generator. There's no interception point. Literally, this passes off to a point where we do control things, but then when it resumes, we don't get control again until the whole thing's done. This is not reactive. There's nothing we can do about this. This is the trade-off of the runtime synchronous stuff. I think it is interesting. As a long-time knockout user, these last three ones are something that I take for granted. But I understand, for someone come from Svelte, it works almost in a different way where it's compiler based. So this might work, but then the second you move this into a different, hoist it up and call the function here, suddenly it doesn't work. So it's slightly a different mental model. This one at least errors for you. What about this one? This one will track. So this will might cause some extra cycles. I agree that this is probably the most dangerous scenario. This is why we untrack components, because if we ever let this kind of stuff sneak into our render tree, you don't know what could happen. So I'd say this one's almost impossible to actually notify people about. But it is definitely something to look at. Props wrapping. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing really to do about this. We can't identify this case. So, yeah. I guess this is the only one that we can actually warn about. And we do. So I think this one's okay. I mean, it's not great, but at least we tell you you're doing something wrong. Resource mutation. I could tell I'm not going to like this one. Right. Yes. This one is a real issue, and it's something that I definitely want to address with Solid 2.0. The problem here is that resources are just signals. So when you try and do some kind of deep mutation, you're basically like triggering everything, right? Like for something simple, you can obviously just like change what's there, but like create resource provides a mutate method which we can update the data signal. However, we need to create a completely new object in order to apply the changes. The thing is that the data in this case is a signal, not a store, so we cannot granularly change only one field in the object. This results in us needing to create a new object with updated URL field. To solve this problem, the experimental storage option was added in Solid 1.5, yes. Because we used to actually have create resource store, which was weird and buggy and very specific. This has the right behavior, but the API sucks because the fact that you can mutate a store is kind of awkward here, because what you really want in this case is just to basically diff the changes coming in and apply them out fine-grained. But the TypeScript is not happy because I'm basically hacking around, you know, what the expectation is. Right. This is kind of the problem. I think the mutation and the data fetching need to be separate from each other, because like we need a way of saying like, hey, when this new data comes in, I want it to be a store-like structure, and I want it to diff and set the fine-grained things. Because in this case, it's not about mutating a deep thing. This is actually about diffing what's come from the server. If you mutate a specific piece, then it doesn't need to try and play this game. The complexity here completely comes in the fact that resources and stores are all getting just wrapped together because the resource primitive does too much and we're forced into it. If we can separate out the async data fetcher from this ability to do the diffs, or be able to basically, if there's a way to just go signal to store with automated diffing, I think this actually solves a lot in this range. And then things like being able to override specific pieces, things like a primitive we've been looking at called create writable really fit in, where we try and direct the graph. The whole pattern of using effects to write to signals or write to stores is not a good pattern. So we need to, this is why create computed is basically going to be deprecated, because its whole reason for existing shouldn't exist. And we need to make good APIs that are based on deriving data rather than writing data to make this stuff work well. So like this is why I always called this experimental, because I knew how clunky it was, because it's just like we really had no choice with Solid's current stores to try and like push too much stuff into it. Right? Like technically speaking, they want a fine-grained mutate option, and like this one doesn't handle it because it's like reconciling. Like you could write this thing so that like you could make your own interface, and then it could like, you know, basically behave like stores do today or something. Like there's ways to hack around this to do what you want, but like I knew like this couldn't be the final solution here. Yeah. So yeah, this one is one of the things that I think why I wanted to talk about 1.8 even is, and why we talk about the async primitive, is if we can split apart these pieces, then being able to access, say, the store directly or deriving data that way will be a lot easier, so to speak. Okay, so this one I think is solvable. It's just we need to work on the API, so that's good. Resources and transitions. If you work with SolidJS router, you probably implemented data functions loaded, blah, blah. Resources and go to the page. Imagine our data depends on some search parameters, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah. So in this case, we're creating a resource, fetching some data based on it, and then passing it through, and then we're using it here and doing suspense when we read it. We click on the button, we will not see the styles of refreshing class because the call set search parameters occurs in a transition like any router navigation action, which is why signals changes are ignored until the transition is finished. To solve this problem, you need to monitor the is routing signal and compare the old filter value to the new one. Yes. Yeah, this one's actually kind of intentional, but it is unexpected, I suppose. But when you're working with transitions in React and with Solid in this case, would have a very similar thing. You basically need to know. The idea here is that if you're aware of the state of the transition, but the gotcha here, and I think this is what they're talking about here, is they put data state refreshing in here, and they're like, why is it not showing refreshing? And the reason is the resource state isn't getting updated in the transition. And I will say this right now, this was another one of my big mistakes. This is one of those ones where you start asking, people start asking for features, and you're like, okay, this seems reasonable. And then they ask for another feature on it, and you're like, yeah, I guess this is still reasonable. And then they get to another one, and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is reasonable anymore. But you've already gone too far. And I feel like this is what happened with create resource. People like the state property of React query. They like being able to know, am I loading, errored, refreshing, whatever, all these state things. So people celebrated it. But it was never the way you were supposed to use it. And I added it kind of because people with TypeScript and they were very excited about narrowing, even though realistically it was the wrong pattern. Really, we should be depending on the state of the transitions. We should be depending on the state of suspense, error boundaries. I know it's not as easy as having a data primitive that just has everything built into it, but these concerns are not local. They are the state of the app moving. So adding data.state was really, even adding data.error was kind of a mistake. People commonly go in and go, why is it that why is this throwing, or why can't I get this error, or all this stuff? And the answer is people are using these primitives wrong, and we don't teach it enough. This is largely a documentation problem. This is largely an expectations problem. And I think this one again is completely solvable, but we made and I blame myself largely for this, a mistake on the resource API, trying to make it dual mode so it could work with or without suspense. I was trying to make it this really convenient thing, but then it upgraded to the more powerful thing. And the reality is we probably should have just kept it to the specific purpose if we could, and then essentially move all these kind of things to keep them in user land. If you really want to know all this stuff, use solid query, with the caveat that cases like this won't necessarily work because it's not actually the right pattern. So yeah. Yeah. Seems like these are hard solutions. Yeah. Some of them are completely doable. As I said, all these async ones here are solvable, and this is largely my motivation. Some people, I got asked earlier, I was doing a podcast, and they're like, why are we doing Solid? What are we doing for Solid 2.0? What's the big feature? And it is actually, we can't do this on cleanup one per se, but it is actually around this. I think this is the part that's lacking. I think resources can do everything you need them to do, but it's not easy. On the easy side, on the basic side, they're incredibly powerful. So you can do way more than you can do with a lot of solutions you pick up. But the second you want to do stuff more complicated, that easiness hinders. And it basically goes against the philosophy of Solid and Solid designs, where it's not about being easy. It's about keeping these things simple, and resources are not simple. So Yeah, I think these are just they need an overhaul. So yeah, these last two really got to it, and that's the end of the list. Well, that wasn't bad at all. For me, the weakest point of Solid is the async stuff. Transitions are still buggy. It's difficult to debug suspense triggers. Many things we fixed at Solid 2.0. We have a creative. Whether your pain points, share in the comments. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is accurate. Basically, if we were to carve up this whole list again really quickly, the first two are kind of design mistakes that can be addressed, might make people unhappy, but it's solvable. It's just mistakes that were made. The next three, props wrapping, untrack, reactive bindings, and onCleanup inside of resources, they're all kind of fundamental. There isn't a ton that can be done. Like we warn, error, etc. on this case. The other ones, this is just, that is going to be the trade-off. That's what people are going to talk about for years when they're like, "Ugh, use effect," like it's going to be something like this. I don't think these are terribly common cases. When you try and actually put them in, you might trip up on them, but they're not like the things you use every day. And then the last ones are, async data fetching is hard. We took a stab at it in 2019 when we introduced suspense. We needed something. This is why suspense took so long in React. You need the other side. You need the data primitive. And they basically just went through a whole bunch of different cycles. And then finally we're like, okay, React server components. That's where we're going to put it. And then it became really the only blessed way of doing it, where technically streaming, all the other mechanisms built into React 18 that they use as server components could work without server components. You could do out of order streaming without server components, but they didn't expose it that way because trying to avoid this level of complexity. I will grant them that async components with an async await kind of looks and feels very nice on the surface. That's not the solution we're going to go with Solid. I've talked about that at length. I don't think that really works. But I do see why we've ended up here, and I think this is one of the most important areas we can work on. It's very interesting to me because there's frameworks like React who took a long time, took a couple swings, and Solid kind of got in there early and doing that. And then there's other frameworks that aren't even really concerned with this problem, haven't got there. So maybe I was just nerd sniped by React, but maybe also this is just where things are heading and not everyone's realized it yet. All right. Okay, cool. Stream's still going. And I think we're ready for this week in JavaScript. Got to do a little prep. So give me 2 seconds here as I get there. I strongly suggest checking out my Vite talk if you get a chance. It's all about Solid Start 1.0. What's preventing it getting out of beta is the 200 open bugs, where most of them are actually open bugs. People are using it in production, companies with millions of users, but I am not satisfied that it's maintainable in the current state, and we have work to do. So we are rebasing it on Nitro. That was the big news. But yeah, let's get to that in this week in JavaScript. I just wanted to kind of put it out there. Give me a second. Close down some of the extra stuff. It's been 2 weeks, so I actually get to go back a little bit further, which is kind of fun. Let me see if I actually have any bookmarks, because I actually don't know that I actually bookmarked anything this time. Oh, right, I remember my bookmarks. So what, 2 weeks ago, my last stream was what, on the 23rd or something? All right, let's get this going. When was my last stream? Okay, yeah, it was the 22nd. Okay, cool. All right. I think we're almost ready for this week in JavaScript. So just bear with me a second. Yeah. All right. All right. Okay. Get it there? I'd like to talk about this week in JavaScript. This week in JavaScript, or actually 2 weeks, because I was traveling, involved me at a number of conferences. While I was only physically in person at one of them, it seems that this great image of me wearing sunglasses appeared at a few of them. So someone asked me if I could wear these sunglasses on stream, and I decided to. So let's look. When I say someone, actually, I think it was our friend Dave. Yeah, apparently these sunglasses look great. So yeah, honestly, I can't see the best out of them. They have the emoticon white pieces on them, but it does the trick. But yeah, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple weeks over the fact that Svelte moving to signals and more importantly fine-grained rendering is kind of this ecosystem shift where everyone was kind of grouped around React, and now everyone's kind of grouped around Solid. You know, how it started, how it's going. This graph actually started from a talk from Misco. I don't actually agree with it completely. I think people, even though this is like kind of small, I think Vue was more fine-grained than Svelte before. I think people really misrepresent Vue. Vue did have the VDOM, but it always actually had fine-grained reactivity. And even in the rendering, it was doing stuff based on the reactive graph, whereas Svelte was always component-based, even without their VDOM. So like I would, in this image, I would have switched Vue and Svelte. Similarly, I actually think where they're heading with Vue Vapor and Svelte 5, both of them are actually right beside Solid on the other side of Quick and Astro. Quick and Astro might actually be, or it's not Astro, sorry, Angular. My bad. I just saw the A. Quick and Angular might actually be the least granular where these things are going, but I don't know this for sure. We're going to actually check this in a little bit. All right. So, are these the JavaScript? Is easy glasses? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, this signal topic has definitely been a hot one the last little bit. I was like traveling, but I just kept on getting like notifications on where this shows up. Yeah, where's the actual slide? Here we go. Yeah, this makes it a little bit clearer what I was talking about with the positioning. From what we saw, Svelte 5, and I did hear that this is it's not quite. I saw an issue earlier. I forget if I bookmarked it where this Svelte 5 wasn't quite as fine-grained as Solid, but generally, where these guys are heading are actually very much in here. And as I said, I think Vue was always on the other side. So anyway, funny conversation, but yeah, apparently I missed a conference. I don't even know how to say this in Spanish, right? Where Solid and signals and just kept on coming up over and over and over again. There's some silly pictures where people are doing flexes. I want to say Tejas and a few others. It looked like it was a fun conference to participate at. I haven't been on the conference circuit as much this fall trying to get work done, but yeah, I'm trying to see if it was a response. It's probably part of like some deep tweet thread. It's all good. If you were around, you know what I'm talking about. But Yeah, I just kept on seeing all these mentions, and I was just like, what the hell's going on over there? Eric gave his solid talk. Apparently this was a crazy React conference, so all good. We'll just kind of move on from this point. But yeah, I mean, a couple other things caught my eyes, and I think that after last week, I was probably a little harsh on Svelte on the marketing side of things, but I think it did open up some really good conversation. Rich Harris actually went and released his first where is it here? His first self-published YouTube video. So there is now a Rich Harris channel. I bet you if we look, he has more followers than this channel does already. Let's. I wouldn't be surprised. Rich is a force, but yeah, you should check out this video if you get a chance. He talks a lot about the idea of, which we talked about last stream, with the idea that what Svelte provides naturally lends to people making wrappers over it. It's funny, I have the closed captioning on right now. I didn't intend to, but like at a certain point in the video, he actually re-implements both Vue and Solid's kind of wrapper APIs, because while they showed the getter as an example, they're saying like there are different ways, and because of the reactivity is kind of semi-compiled, you can choose how your wrappers and the community will land on it, etc. Which is interesting, because like part of our reason for liking the functions is being very strict and specific on what, like making it kind of like consistent, where this is kind of like, let's see where this goes. I'm definitely interested to see where it does go, because as I said, it looks like Svelte 5 is definitely very much on the same page of what we've been doing with Solid. Similarly, also kind of related is, I was talking about subs because the channel finally hit 10K subs, which is pretty sweet given everything. But I got to meet Rich in New York when I was at IJS, which is very cool. We went to a pizzeria, where was it? It's called Juliana's in Brooklyn, where I was going to try some, New York pizza. I was told, apparently, by the pizza police when I was at IJS that the pizza I actually had couldn't be considered official New York pizza because it had some broccoli on it. But regardless, it was an awesome meal. First time I met Rich in person, we talked for several hours, really, about, where things are going. Really interesting conversation, honestly, and I'm actually pretty excited because I'm gonna do more Svelte content next week when Dominic Ganaway joins us to talk about Svelte 5 and the work he's been doing. So yeah, you can expect that for next Friday. And the internet seemed to like this picture considerably. So that is pretty good. I honestly just glad to finally meet Rich in person. That was IJS. What else do I want to talk about here? Yeah, having too much fun with the idea that I don't know if anyone actually got my bad joke, but Solid uses 3D shapes for a lot of advertisement, and this was me kind of poking fun of everyone adopting signals. But anyway, it's all good. So this has been definitely an interesting couple weeks for me, just traveling and seeing kind of this mass kind of understanding of like that, things are heading in a certain direction. Yeah, I actually like this. Yeah, Rich embracing complexity as being such a fun arc. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we knew at some point that there would have to be like Svelte would mature and that we would need more powerful patterns. Like what was lovely about Svelte early on was that it was like, oh, let's just use let, right? And but then like there's so many things you couldn't do. I've complained about it in the past, right? But Ruins can do. I mean, before Ruins you could do it, but it wasn't like first. It didn't feel first party. Now they've kind of bridged this gap, but it does add a whole layer to Svelte, which people might have not expected. I saw this thread from Jay Larkey, Parasocial, whatever you want to call him, and it is this. I suggest people take maybe a quick look at it. It talks about this tension between the magic and the non-magic. Because for a while there, I was just like, I was actually on this almost just use store side. I've said I really like the Svelte not in the Svelte files, and it's I like this kind of defense of it. So, like. There is some interesting issues here because of the fact that reactivity doesn't work in JavaScript, but like I think we've kind of just gotten there to accept that there's this weakness in the language and that we need to I think we're all just getting there, like we need to be able to do this to get the work done we want to get done. So yeah, all together. Yeah, actually, this thread was great. I remember now why I talked about this, because comparisons to hooks, again, not there. Is there a way not to make it a Vue 3 moment? It sounds crazy, but I think they want this to be their Vue 3 moment because Vue 3 was right. Svelte 5 is right. Those were the steps in the right direction. I'm sorry. I suck. Runes. There. Since I was a kid, this is one of the words that I always pronounced wrong, and usually I got away with it because when people talk about like looking at ancient ruins or ancient ruins, like it's like that's like no one corrects you, no one thinks it's a different thing. There are some languages, kind of like on an academic side, but nothing that's ever, to my knowledge, gone popular mainstream. Yeah, I mean, this whole thread was a lot of thinking out loud, but I actually quite liked this exercise because the truth of the matter is, like, this is a really good step forward for Svelte, even if I might have not come across completely like that last week. I think it is definitely. So actually, no, I think I was pretty clear on thinking it was good last week. It was more just like, there's certain positioning with Svelte, I guess, where I've kind of pushed back a little bit about like them not being exposed. But I think that it doesn't matter. We're kind of getting to this zone where like people just know that they want these primitives, probably want them in the language, and they're just trying to figure out how to actually make up for the shortcoming of JavaScript that we can't seem to like deal with. Also, I want to highlight this article. I'm trying to remember why I didn't share it at first. Oh, right, because I'm always self-conscious of when I make myself into the meme. This is pretty harsh on React because they're saying like they're kind of sitting in the corner and like not following the beat wave or the signals wave while everyone else is doing it. But this is a cool article. It's called React versus the World. It has a lot of similar vibes to my like React versus Signals article from several months ago. But the author's a great writer. So yeah, I think this is a good one to check out. I just put it on the list. I think the only reason I didn't retweet it at the time was because I didn't want to get in the middle of whatever that is suggesting. But the article is actually quite good. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate way to say it. There's an interesting question about composability in relation to runes, because runes are not, but signals they create are, right? Which means at that point, the signals aren't actually hidden. You kind of get them, maybe? I don't know. Maybe because the compiler on the other side, you don't get them. Yeah, actually, that's fair. Yeah, it is a very interesting thing because in the signals discussion that's happening right now, behind closed doors, but will soon be public for Brilliant the browser, this whole scope-based versus stack-based question is actually coming up a lot, right? Because Svelte works on something that looks scope-based, whereas say like more classically like Solid uses stack-based, and they both have these trade-offs, which we talked about in that article, So yeah, I mean it's definitely a challenge to kind of consolidate. The funniest thing is we both kind of agree that we don't really want people to be like thinking about them. Ultimately, we want them to kind of be a language feature. It's just that like how you get there when you have these limitations now we kind of just aren't 100% aligned on. Yeah, no, these glasses are really cool. There's a reason why this ended up across a certain portion of tech Twitter this past week. Yeah, we already talked about this. Okay, let's get back to it. Yeah, I think we already talked about wallet support. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's been just a lot of libraries. I always try and remember what actually happened after the fact. But another big one that I want to talk about was ViteConf. I was traveling, so I'm still catching up on videos. Obviously, I have gotten through the framework talks. I haven't got to the testing or tooling talks yet, so I haven't seen them completely. But yeah, very much enjoyed all of the talks in both framework sections. Right from Nikhil talking about Vinci, and seeing Angular. I always talk. I'm always excited when seeing Angular kind of adopt and the new tools, and kind of like the change going on in Angular. It's just been amazing to see this kind of move forward. They don't. I shouldn't say they don't care, because they do care a lot about existing users and the existing flows, but they're very dedicated now to modernizing stuff and making Angular more accessible to new developers again. So it's very exciting to see. There's a lot happening on Vite side. There was also I watched a bunch of talks in the afternoon. Marco releasing Marco Run, talking about their meta framework, which actually has something pretty cool. Their router is compiled, which is I'm very curious about it. I think we're going to have a chance to ask Michael Rawlings about that, because in 2 weeks we're going to get the Marco update. We're going to find out about Marco 6. We're going to find out about Marco Run. And I'm pretty excited about that. So the next couple streams are going to be pretty cool. I think, though, the funniest thing that probably stood out to me while I was in the middle of watching that stream was that Manu, I believe, said that Quick doesn't use a virtual DOM. Which, if that is true, that is a new development that I was not aware of. I think he said something along the lines as we use JSX but not a virtual DOM. And I am very interested by that claim, because that is I could see the path heading there, but I wasn't sure they're there yet. So it's actually quick.builder.io, isn't it? Yeah. I kind of want to. I haven't explored this on stream since well, it's been a while. Yeah, I mean, for some updates, but like, I wonder what the quickest way to confirm this is, because what I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to grab a what do they call it? Use signal, and how's the best way to do this? Let's go const s equals use signal, and then go s dot value. I just want to do this right here. Actually, the easiest way to do this, actually, this might actually just be this. Const r equals this, return r. Okay, so we got a few options here. We're going to assign a signal top level to a value. We can put it in here too, just for fun. What does it say here? Let's make it 5. Okay, and then we're gonna console log some stuff. I'm sorry, I keep on pressing save. I don't know why. Let's go JSON. Oh, right. We need one more thing. We actually need to make this code come to the client. So to come to the client, okay. So, yeah, okay. I got something that isn't recursive, so this isn't fair, but type P props object. This is definitely a v1.8 node. Immutable props null, children, hello, quick. Okay. So this looks like a v1.8 node. But to actually make this code ship to the client, because that's on the server, maybe it's different on the client, we would need to add like a onClick $, and then we would need to, sorry, there's not onColon, just, we'd need to actually update the s.value ++. onClick. What does it say? Type numbers are not assignable to singular. Oh, right, of course. I need a function wrapper. Okay. This is the SSR side. How do I see the browser side? Oh, here it is. Client. Type P. Yeah, it's definitely a v1.8. Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check that. Unless the playground isn't updated, it's possible that this is an older version, but I'm pretty sure I'm looking at a virtual DOM here. Can I? Yeah, and I mean, thank God for that virtual DOM, because if I click this 10 times, see, and the whole component reran, I'd be recreating this paragraph element over and over and over and over again, or whatever JSX like I put in here. So without a virtual DOM in this scenario, if this works and it updates like it does, this would be very inefficient. So it's a good thing for that, since Quick supports this, that it is a virtual DOM. Yeah, I mean, we've had Manu and Adam on the stream and Misko on the stream previously. I just was thinking maybe that like they haven't been on for a little while. I haven't followed the latest. I thought maybe I missed something new that had changed. That would be some intermediate component. It would be a v1.8 if they use v1.8 reconciler. Yeah, I guess so, but I'm just saying is like when you render the JSX, you like both on the client and the server, you end up with a virtual DOM representation where you can see the like the elements as objects. Like it's basically there's a render pass. You're right. It doesn't always reconcile. But yeah, anyway, good to know. It's possible this isn't the latest, but I just wanted to like quick sanity check that I hadn't missed something here, at least within the last couple months. If something came out in the last couple weeks, then maybe that'd be different. But just like in general, Quick has been using a virtual DOM as far as I know this whole time. Okay. But yeah, no, it's ViteConf is amazing. I love the format. I love the fact that everything's pre-recorded and then it just runs twice. I wonder if the live stream's still up. Can we still get to it?
The good news is the process of making source map and
yeah, so they did a smart move this time where they like put the replay on a second channel or like a second video, so you can just get in here and watch any of the talks at any point. And there's shortcut links now. If we view it on YouTube, I think you can actually find the specific talk you're looking for, right? I love this feature in YouTube, but you can actually find it and be like, there's the Vinci talk, Solid talk. Let me see if I can find it. Further down the road, you can tour Vite ecosystem. Fred, yeah, there's a great Astro talk too, talking about view transitions. This helps me learn. And I love this. Kent C. Dodds was present or was one of the speakers, and he talked about React Router in Vite and basically called it a framework. He said, like, obviously for more features you want to do something like Remix, but he basically was suggesting it's enough. And I love seeing prominent people from the React ecosystem, kind of figure out how to frame the whole framework thing. Because like his whole conversation was that basically his conclusion was that frameworks are are relative to the scope of the problem, essentially. So very, very cool to see some prominent people from the React community participate in ViteConf. That has not happened in the past. So I still got a couple more talks to catch up on. I have not watched any of the mobile talks here. I'm interested to see what making a CLI with Vite is from Theo. But it looks, this conference is always jam-packed, so definitely cool that this is available for people to watch at their leisure. All right. I'm trying to see where I was at here. What else do I have here? Right, yeah. Actually, I'm pretty excited to talk about this next one here. It's funny because I've been working at Netlify now for over a year, and I have to admit I haven't talked about a lot of Netlify features very much. And Netlify has been going through a bit of a transition. We've talked about that a little bit on the stream. So it hasn't been, there's been, the enterprise focus and all, a few other things. And so it just haven't crossed paths, so to speak, even though I work there. But this latest feature definitely is on my radar and the kind of thing that I care about. And it kind of represents what I've been noticing recently at Netlify, this kind of base, kind of almost like back to basics approach and stuff where, you see the excitement on like working again on the platform from like, rethinking it from a primitives level. And largely representative, even like Matt's been taking on a lot of this stuff himself personally. That's why he was very excited to share this. But I'm pretty excited about this, is that I think I just have to open the article to actually show you what I'm talking about. This new use of cache control headers and stale while revalidate through header pattern is incredibly powerful, and it's also it adheres kind of to web standards. See, right now we're in the state, and Solid Start, we've been waiting for, people have been waiting for it to come out, and I keep on going, okay, need this feature for this platform, this feature for this platform. Do you support DSG? Do you support ISR? And all these different platforms doing stuff. And to be fair, there is an element of this that is obviously Netlify specific. You can see it right in here. But what this allows, using basically just standard header configuration, is control over that kind of ISR like experience. Like instead of going to something that's very proprietary, we almost are working towards something that's almost standard like sure, maybe instead of Netlify you have Vercel here, but seeing this kind of shift off of being able to give this kind of control to the end users and being able to, you know, like not feel like you're like in a very specific system that was built just for that platform is really quite powerful. Like I've never really wanted to work through how to get, you know, ideal ISR, you know, for these different platforms. And now it might be just a matter of setting the right headers. I see people people like the sunglasses. But yeah, no, this is a very powerful thing when combined with these edge functions. There's some other great examples here. Some using e-tag for you know, invalidation based on deployment. Like you have the control of when these things work, and you can just use these pieces. I believe I was trying to look it up. I think Vercel also has this very similar feature. So I do, what was it? Let me see if I can find it. Vercel cache control. Caching on Vercel's edge network. Yeah, okay, so this looks similar. S-Max age. I guess they have some special keys or whatever, so it's like not quite the same, but I think this direction in general will hopefully get us to a place where we're not talking about ISR anymore, and we're just talking about like that's how we build our website. So it does look like there are some similar mechanisms here, but yeah, I'm stoked to see this happen in general. So yeah, as I said, I don't always, you know, talk about the company stuff, but this is very cool, especially, you know, being very close to standards and being really accessible to anyone who builds on these platforms. So yeah, good stuff. I kind of wonder whether you worked on Netlify stuff day to day or if they paid you to do things. No, I honestly, I only really end up talking about stuff when they've been doing things that are relevant. Like this recent refocus that's happened in the last, you know, few months seems to be something that I can get excited about, because like this, like looking at the primitives, looking at the basis, you know, giving that control to the you know, developers and the framework authors is really important. And these kind of building blocks, like, you know, Netlify has a lot of pieces. Like they have stuff kind of similar to the file system API or build output API, you know, that say like Vercel has, but they didn't push it. They didn't make that a marketing thing that they pushed. And so we never really talk about it. But like, I'm happy to see Netlify like return to like this place where like these are the things we're talking about, you know, so. Get your fundamentals right and everything falls into place. Yeah. And that's largely what the solid philosophy has been, right? So like this alignment, you know, feels quite nice, and I'm excited to be able to talk about this. Yeah. Actually, you know who those guys are, like the biggest supporters of this. Look, here's Michael Jackson in here. You know, nice work. You know, like both Ryan Florence and Michael came in to congratulate Matt on this. Let me see if I can see it here. They hid the quote tweets. View post engagement. Yeah, see, retweets from Michael Jackson, use the platform. I think there's something that just slightly, yeah. This is very good. You know, it's not the thing that gets blown open, but like for those who appreciate these kind of things, like this is the direction we want to see things going. We don't want to try and figure out how to use some proprietary ISR thing, you know. So yeah, this is the thing is, the Remix guys are right fundamentally. The thing is, not all the tools were in place in all the platforms, and this kind of closes the gap, especially with edge functions. So yeah, this is very good. I say this as I'm kind of exiting out of worrying about this layer as much and passing that on to Nitro to a certain degree. But I just seeing these kind of things, I know will make everyone's life a lot easier. We talked about ViteConf. Yeah, let's give Fabian another shout out about Valibot. He's done now with his paper, helped edit a bit on that as well, and he's just in, I guess, promotion mode now. But this library is impressive. This is good. It's a good, quick read. You know, good promo article. I love this Jared Palmer tweet that he quoted here about the fact that cursor-based or chaining syntax doesn't really work well for tree shaking. So yeah, no, his project's been on the up. I'm very excited to see this in Solid start. Others are excited too. So yeah, I think this library has a lot of legs, and he keeps on working on the performance. So yeah, this is what we've been waiting for, I think, on the validation story. You know, it was fine on the server, but now it's actually small enough to be usable in the client. Yeah, and we already did that segment about solid criticisms. I think it was a great article. I guess that's all I really have this week. I just want to do a quick look at my bookmarks again, but oh, right. There was a link early on, and I might have accidentally closed it at one point. I wanted to look at see if I can find it. It was angular-signals-jsx. There we go. Let's star this for fun. I just wanted to talk about this one briefly. This came across my radar. I've been building like different reactive libraries into DOM expressions, the same core as Solid, to demo its capability. I never thought of doing Angular yet. I did Preact on stream, but this is kind of interesting, right? Because it's just the Signals API plus basically the same experience as Solid, and they're just showing that like it's basically the same speed as Solid here, and comparing it to Angular no zone of 15. And I think this kind of illustrates like how it's not just holding the signals, it's what you do with them that actually make the biggest difference here. We keep on hearing the signal conversation, and there's a certain amount of people who dismiss it, like we've had signals before, and then, or on the other hand, there's people who are like, oh yeah, now I don't know, Preact has signals or something, and it's the same. No, like there is a huge difference between, say, adding signals to Angular today and using signals the way ViewVapor does. I presume we haven't seen it out there. Svelte 5, SolidJS does. There is a significant change. Using signals is the start. So yeah, I think this is cool to see people playing around with this. I haven't seen much chatter about this, but you know, it's cool to see people understand the potential here of applying these patterns. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. All right, I think that pretty much wraps it up here for this week in JavaScript. I don't know if we'll be seeing much more of the glasses after this, but I definitely had fun. So, you know, until next week when we have Dominic Ganaway joining us to talk about Svelte 5. And then the following week, we're going to have Michael Rawlings to talk about Marco. And then I'm going to see if I can line up a couple other guests. But yeah, I think we just call it a stream for today. And thanks for joining. See ya.